Lake Thrive, and we're starting the meeting Spring into Your Best Life. Thank you so much for joining us. First, we're going to have Dr. Nikki Davis talk to us about she'll be focusing on the health impacts. So we're streaming on Facebook, I see. That's great. So sorry that took just a minute to get that started. So Dr. Nikki Davis will get us started, and she'll be focusing on the health impacts of our diet. And so Dr. Davis, we're lucky to have her in Salt Lake City. So Dr. Davis, and she'll tell us a little bit more about her background, but she is truly a rocket scientist turned medical doctor with a strong interest in plant-based nutrition. And Dr. Davis has been very helpful. She's done several presentations for Salt Lake Thrive. They're always really super. And so we'll get started once again with Dr. Davis, and she'll give us a little bit more background and then tell us all about health benefits of a healthy plant-based lifestyle. So thank you, Dr. Davis.
All right. Hi. Thank you, Harriet. I really appreciate it. I want to start out by just asking everyone to please mute yourself. If you're not muted, we can actually hear you. And then I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. So just give me a moment. All right, Harriet, are you seeing my screen?
I see your photo, yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. I really appreciate y'all taking time out of your busy weekends and coming in to learn a little bit more about being plant-based. So today I'm going to be talking about how the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine can help you spring into your best life. So just a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Salt Lake City, Utah, and initially decided to pursue engineering. And I'll be honest, I had always been interested in nutrition and health, but I really thought that becoming a doctor would just take too long. So I decided to do engineering, which ended up taking a long time too, because I ended up getting my master's degree in engineering. And then I worked as an engineer for ATK Launch Systems, which is a contractor for NASA. So I worked on the space shuttle program. So that's where you get the rocket scientist from. But I worked there for about 6 years, and I'll say that I really enjoyed becoming an engineer. I liked the challenge of it, but then the day-to-day work, I just wasn't passionate about. And on my off time, I found myself reading books about nutrition and health. And that's just what I was passionate about. Whenever I was speaking with someone about food, I just could go on for hours. So I was talking to my husband about it, and he said, you know, if you're really interested in this health aspect of being plant-based, because at the time I had already been plant-based, he said, you should really be a doctor. You'd be a really good doctor and you could really help a lot of people. So that initially I said, there's no way I'm going back to school for more schooling, but that just kind of started the idea of it. And it was just, I couldn't not do it. So I left my job as an engineer and started medical school in 2013. Graduated from the University of Utah School of Medicine. And while I was a medical student, I had the chance to work with Dr. John McDougall during one of his 10-day live-in programs in 2016. And again, I was already plant-based, but just being able to sit down with Dr. McDougall and see the amazing changes that he was able to help people make within only 10 days. I mean, I was seeing people get off
Dr. Dave,
yes.
Nikki, we're not seeing, I see a static picture of you, but we're not seeing, so I don't know if you're sharing the right thing.
Yeah, are you seeing the about me?
No, I'm seeing
Oh,
a static picture of you.
okay. I'm not sure if it froze or let me see if I can. Let's see.
There you are.
Let me try to share this screen again and we'll see if that works.
Okay. Yeah, it worked earlier in practice, but. There we go.
Okay, that's working.
Yes.
I'm going to try to go back. Oops.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Is that, you're seeing the
Yes,
About Me page
yes,
now?
that's that
Perfect.
got
Sorry
me. There
about
we go.
that. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, so yeah, so I was able to work with Dr. McDougall and see the changes he was able to help people make, where they were getting off blood pressure medication. They were decreasing their insulin or even getting off insulin within 10 days. And it was just amazing to see. And I already knew about the benefits of the plant-based diet, but this really solidified it for me. And so I applied and went to a family medicine residency from 2017 until last year. So I graduated in June of 2020. And early in 2020, right before I graduated, I had the chance to intern at the True North Health Center, which, if you're not familiar with it, it's a fasting center. So you can do water fasting there, but you can also just go and eat really healthy, whole food, plant-based meals there. And that was really a great opportunity as well. So I got to do that in March of last year. So it was interesting because I went at the end of February and came home at the end of March. So I was there kind of as the pandemic was starting. And then, so I graduated and then became board certified in family medicine. And then luckily was able to take my lifestyle medicine board exam in November of 2020 and am now boarded in lifestyle medicine as well. And then this is kind of an exciting new thing that's happening. I'm going to be starting telehealth services with a company called Plant-Based Telehealth in a couple of weeks. And I'll be servicing Utah and California. And I'll be expanding to some other states as well in the near future. So you'll be able to get an appointment with me for lifestyle medicine. All right, so today I wanted to talk about lifestyle medicine. What is that? And talk about the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine and why they're important. So first of all, just talking generally about lifestyle medicine. So the American College of Lifestyle Medicine actually started in 2004. So it's been around for a while, and it's been there to help educate healthcare providers about lifestyle medicine. And then they started allowing people to become board certified in lifestyle medicine. So in 2015, people could start taking the exam and become board certified. And then in 2016, it became international. So anyone around the world can be board certified in lifestyle medicine. And basically what it is to really put it in the basic level, you've got lifestyle medicine versus conventional medicine. Now, I've been trained in conventional medicine, and Dr. Olson, who's going to be speaking next, also has been. And there's definitely a need for conventional medicine. If you have an infection or you have something that comes up that is an emergency, I mean, there are a lot of things that are important that we need to be able to treat. But it's definitely more of a disease-focused approach. You come to the doctor and they say, well, you have diabetes. So I'm going to try to treat that number, that hemoglobin A1C that's high, with these medications. And by the way, you should probably try to eat healthier and exercise some more. But really, the provider is more responsible, where we are the ones that are giving you the medications, and the patient is saying, okay, doctor, what should I do? What do you want to give me that I need to do? Whereas lifestyle medicine is more about looking at the root cause of the problem. So we're not just treating the numbers, we're looking at what caused you to get into this place in the first place. So how did the diabetes start? And we look at the lifestyle. So the lifestyle related chronic diseases, such as hypertension, diabetes, obesity, and we use evidence-based approaches. So this is where we look at the research, we look at the data, and that is what we use to treat, reverse, and prevent the lifestyle-related chronic diseases. So I look at this as a more health-focused approach. If you are in a disease state, we want to get you into a more health-focused state. And in this way, the patient is actually more responsible, where the provider is giving you the information, but the patient has to make some big changes. So lifestyle medicine came about, and they said, what are the most important things to help someone have a healthy lifestyle? And number one, which I love that it's number one, because to me, this is one of the most important pillars, is a whole food plant-based diet. So we'll talk about that a little bit, and you'll hear more about plant-based diet and the benefits from Dr. Olson after my talk. The second pillar is physical activity. They actually call this physical activity for a reason. They don't call it exercise, because exercise, if you imagine, is you're going to the gym early in the morning, you're running on the treadmill, where physical activity is really just doing something that gets your heart going. So that could be working in the garden, walking to the grocery store, things like that. The third pillar is stress management, and then emotional wellness. The fourth pillar is sleep. So of course, that's something that all of us, I think, could do better. The fifth pillar is the avoidance of risky substances, such as tobacco. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then the sixth pillar is positive psychology and social connectedness, something that I think all of us realized during the pandemic is really important for your well-being. So the first pillar, talking about a whole food plant-based diet, really all I'm going to tell you is what I would recommend that you eat when you're eating a whole food plant-based diet and what you should not be eating. And then I'll let Dr. Olson talk a little bit more in depth on the diet. So the things that you want to focus on, like I said, is whole foods. So whole grains, such as brown rice, millet, barley, oats, starchy vegetables. So these are some of my favorite things: potatoes, sweet potatoes. And you could also look at starchy foods are also some of those whole grains. So brown rice is very starchy, corn is very starchy. These are the foods that are going to keep you full and satiated. So they're very important. Non-starchy vegetables are like broccoli, cauliflower, carrots, tomatoes, and those are going to give you some of those extra vitamins and minerals that you need. Legumes are also very starchy. That's going to be beans, lentils, peas, and then of course fruit. So all sorts of fruits. So those are really the main aspects of a whole food plant-based diet. And what you really want to try to minimize or not eat at all are animal products. So meat, that includes red meat, poultry, fish and shellfish, eggs, animal-derived milk, butter, and cheese. So that's all dairy products, vegetable oils. And of course, I could talk about oils forever, but we can't go into that too much today. But oils are very processed, 100% fat. So I do not recommend eating oils at all, even vegetable oils. And then of course, you want to minimize or not eat the fake meats and cheeses. These are really foods that have stripped out proteins, so soy protein isolate or pea proteins that have been stripped out of another food and put into these fake products. So although it's great for the planet and great for animals, it's not going to be good for your health to eat those things. It's better to eat a whole food plant-based diet. The second pillar of lifestyle medicine is physical activity. And really what we found is that the amount of physical activity that you really should be getting per week to benefit your health the most for the smallest amount of time is about 150 minutes of moderate intensity. So that would be 30 minutes, 5 days a week. And when I say moderate intensity, what that means is that you can talk, but you can't sing. So basically, when you're singing, you're not really taking a lot of breaths. And so it makes it more difficult to sing. Now, lighter intensity would be that you could talk and sing. Your heart rate. So I know a lot of people have these fancy watches. I don't have one of those, but if you can see what your heart rate percentage is of the maximum, the moderate intensity would be 64 to 76% of the maximum. So you can watch that too. And then just be looking out for sedentary behavior. So there's research that shows that just being sedentary actually increases your mortality and morbidity. Morbidity just means having diseases. And especially if you're watching TV, it actually increases just by whether you're sitting on the couch reading a book or sitting on the couch watching TV. Watching TV actually increases it. So just being aware of that. This is just showing where they got that 150 minutes from. So you can see kind of where the little red X is. That's at the 150-minute mark. And so you can see that the biggest bang for your buck is really getting that activity between 0 and 150. And then it kind of levels off. Now you're still going to get benefit if you exercise more than 150 minutes per week, but it's just not as pronounced as that first 150 minutes. So it just decreases your risk of dying prematurely the more physically active you become. Now, there was a study called the Nurses' Health Study, and this showed a significant reduction in all-cause mortality with as little as 1 to 2 hours of moderate to vigorous physical activity per week. So even just doing 1 hour, so that's 2 30-minute sessions, really reduces your risk of all-cause mortality. So that's pretty amazing. And then the other thing is that just standing for 2 hours a day is associated with a 10% reduction in mortality of all causes. So even just trying to stand more during the day as opposed to sit can help with your mortality. So the third pillar of lifestyle medicine is stress management and emotional wellness. Now, this is one that's affected all of us over the last year. Stress, when people are stressed and overwhelmed, they're actually less likely to engage in healthy habits. I'm sure all of you have had those days where you're just super stressed. It's been a hectic day and you come home and you just want to sit on the couch and do nothing and you want to order takeout. And that happens to all of us. And it's very easy to see how when you have that day to day, you have a very stressful life, that you just have a hard time engaging in those healthy habits. Stress has been found to suppress the immune system and can affect every organ in your body. That we found that actually corporate downsizing increases cardiovascular disease death rates. So just having that stress from work, long hours, can increase heart disease risk. And all of this, so the stress itself can lead to unhealthy behavior. So when you're stressed out, some people will reach for a cigarette. Some people will reach for that beer. Some people say, I just don't care about the diet anymore. I'm just going to eat unhealthy today because I'm just stressed out. Or they have physical inactivity. So I know that all of us have been in that position. One thing that you want to be aware of when you're looking at stress management is, do you have any underlying mood disorders? So something that you want to talk to your doctor about. Is there any underlying depression or anxiety that needs to be looked at? And what we found is that
whatever you want.
It's not all bad. So you might say, well, gosh, I can't do anything about my stress.
You might think about.
There's somebody who's not muted. Go ahead and just make sure you're muted. But basically, if you're feeling like, I just have a stressful life, there's nothing I can do, it's not true. You actually can create a stress management plan that helps lower the effects of stress. And this is something that's been proven in research. And so talking to your doctor or a psychologist or a therapist, a counselor, to create an action plan is actually something that has been shown to be very helpful. So that's something that I would do if you're feeling like, I just can't get a hold of this stress. And then if we look at the emotional wellness aspect of the third pillar, so we looked at the stress, we know that we need to treat the stress, but then we also need to create this emotional wellness. And how do we do that? We need to connect with others. Again, this one's hard because with the pandemic, all of us have been more isolated. So connecting with others is so important. So we need to find ways to do that. Getting involved in activities, relaxation. So listening to music, meditating, that's something that we're going to talk about with Marty later today, is doing some meditation type things. Dancing, if you like that, yoga, exercise, whatever it is that relaxes you, making sure that you're doing something like that. Creative hobbies. That's one thing that I've loved that's come out of the pandemic for me, is that I've started a lot of different creative hobbies. Journaling. So journaling not only about what you're grateful for, but also stressful events. So if you don't have someone to talk to about a specific stressful event, sometimes it's just useful to write that down on paper. And just by having it out on paper, it helps you kind of release some of that stress. But one of the things, if anything else you could do, is to write about what you're grateful for. So one thing you could do is every night have a journal and just write 3 things that you're grateful for. And that's been shown just to improve your emotional wellness, just doing that. And that's pretty simple to do. And then of course, if you're a spiritual person, having those spiritual needs met is important too. Now, the fourth pillar is sleep. So sleep, gosh, this one's important because if you don't get sleep, you feel it. You don't feel great. And so sleep is so important, not only getting enough sleep, but getting quality sleep. 1/3 of our lives are spent sleeping, so you want it to be good sleep. Now, the general requirement is 7, 8, maybe 9 hours per day. The average US adult actually sleeps about 7 hours, not quite, so we're almost there. But 20% of the people in the United States sleep less than 6 hours per night. And then you've got 60 million adults in the United States who frequently have difficulty sleeping, insomnia, sleep apnea, things like that. So why is sleep important? Well, there is DNA remodeling and repair that goes on. So if you think about, for instance, where cancer initiates, it's in your DNA. And so one of the things your body does really well is it repairs your DNA. So you need to give your body time to be able to do that. You also have leptin that is secreted into your body, and that helps control your appetite while you're sleeping. Over the course of the evening, your cortisol starts out low and then it slowly rises. And once it peaks, that's when you have wakefulness in the morning. You have fatty acid metabolism that happens during sleep. And I put on here can't eat because when I was in school doing some of my pre-med requirements, I had a physiology class. And I remember that my instructor, he said, you know, the reason I think that we sleep is so that we can't eat. Because if we didn't sleep, we would just eat 24/7. And so he thought that it was just a way for your body to be able to take a break from just constantly eating and having to deal with, dealing with all of that food that you're putting down there. So it just gives you a break. It's kind of like a fast. And that's why we call, of course, breakfast a break of your fast, but it is a way for you to fast during the night, which allows your body to heal while you're sleeping. Now, sleep, so the darkness is what triggers melatonin secretion. And of course, if you know, melatonin is a natural hormone in your body that allows you to become sleepy. And so darkness is what triggers that. The other thing that's interesting about sleep is that you've got what's called cutaneous vasodilation. So cutaneous just means the skin, and vaso is vessel, and dilation is that it opens. And so you have the vessels in the peripheral skin that are dilating to allow more blood get to your extremities and warm up your extremities. So at night, your extremities are expected to warm as your core body temperature cools. And this is what also helps with sleep initiation. So if you're having issues with initiating sleep, one of the little tricks you can use is making sure that your extremities are warm. So whether that's wearing socks or using a heating pad, making sure that your extremities are warm so that your body knows, okay, this is the part where I start to initiate sleep. And then we already talked about how cortisol peaks as you wake. Now, if you were talking to me as your doctor and you were saying, I'm having issues with sleep, these are the types of things that I would tell you. This is the lifestyle prescription for sleep. So the first thing is bed is for sleep and sex only. If you have a television in your room, you need to get rid of it. You should not be laying in your bed looking at a TV screen or scrolling on your phone. It really should just be for sleep. The other thing you want to do is making sure that you're establishing a regular sleep cycle. So you want to make sure that you are waking up and going to bed about the same time. If it's all over the place, if you're waking up really early during the week and then you're trying to sleep in on the weekends, that can actually screw up the quality of your sleep, because your body is expecting you to be asleep during about the same time frame every day. And then we talked about increasing that peripheral cutaneous vasodilation. So socks, heating pad, we talked about. You could also take a bath or a shower at night to help kind of warm up those extremities. And then also some hot tea that's non-caffeinated at night. Another thing you want to make sure of is that you're minimizing and eliminating bedroom noises and lights. And lights, it seems like, well, gosh, yeah, I turn off that lamp, but you have to be really careful, because even those little tiny lights, maybe you have on your light switch, it has a little light that's on. Even those small lights can cause you to have some extra light in the room. So being aware of that. Also, taking power naps. So if you are going to take a nap during the day, making sure that you're keeping it under 30 minutes. If it goes longer than 30 minutes, you're really getting into more of that deep sleep cycle, and you can end up waking up feeling really groggy. So if you are going to take a nap, just keeping it short. You want to make sure that you're getting good daytime exposure to light. That is going to help. So during the day, that you're not just sitting in a dark room with no outside lights at all. You want to have some daytime light. And even if that means just getting up and walking outside for a little while. And then having good physical activity during the day helps too. You want to decrease your light at night, especially blue light. You want to eliminate caffeine at night, and then avoid alcohol 3 hours before bed. And I know that's a long time, but alcohol can affect your sleep. You want to eliminate after dinner and late night snacking, because that also can affect your sleep. And then avoiding high sodium foods, that can affect your vascular tone and the vasodilation that we were talking about. And then same thing with hydration. If you're not hydrated enough, that blood cannot get to your extremities well. And then minimizing stress. So making sure that if you want to get to bed at say 10 or 11 o'clock at night, that you're having about an hour of active relaxation before that bedtime. All right, so the fifth pillar, I just want to make sure that we're doing okay on time. Looks like we're okay. The fifth pillar is avoiding risky substance abuse. So I know that everybody at this point knows that tobacco is harmful. It is the single largest preventable cause of morbidity and mortality. And compared to people who've never smoked, smokers lose about 10 years of life, and of course suffer many more health problems and disabilities. It causes 87% of lung cancer deaths. It causes coronary heart disease deaths and COPD deaths. And over 40 cancers are related to tobacco use. So this is one thing that as lifestyle medicine doctors, we are really well trained on, is how to help people quit these things like tobacco. The other thing you want to think about is alcohol. So alcohol is one of those that I know a lot of us enjoy. I would say you have to be careful, because alcohol in itself is not healthy, right? We know that it's not healthy. The only thing about it that you could consider that it could be healthy is that it is causing sometimes some of that social connectedness. And so trying to find a way to still have that social connectedness without the alcohol is something that you could consider. Now, 17 million adults do have some sort of alcohol use disorder, so it's a pretty large number. And it is associated with cancer, injuries, and deaths. So something you just want to consider. The final pillar is positive psychology and social connectedness. Now, this one is extremely important, especially now during the pandemic. So positive psychology, what is that? So basically that's looking at amplifying happiness through positive affect, and then looking at your individual strengths and virtues. Now it's perfect because today, not only is it the first day of spring, but I just noticed this morning that it's International Happiness Day. So it kind of ties in perfectly to this. But having a positive affect. So what that means is that you are not only content with the past and you're happy in the present, but you have hope for the future. One of the things that we've found that can help with having this kind of positive psychology, this positive affect, is understanding what your personal strengths are. And I found that there's this online quiz it's called viacharacter.org. It's a free survey. It takes about 15 minutes, and it will go through what are your character strengths. And just knowing what your character strengths are can help with that positive psychology. So then if we look at what the pillars of positive psychology are, so positive emotion, just having a positive outlook. Engagement, are you engaged in activities and with people? Relationships, having meaning in your life is extremely important. Feeling like you have something that's meaningful that you're doing in your life. And then what are your accomplishments? So working on all of these things and having the ability to understand what your character strengths are will help you understand what maybe your meaning is and what sorts of things you can accomplish in your life. And then social connectedness. Now this one has been really difficult for all of us. I know that I've struggled, our family has struggled with the social connectedness. You don't really realize what you have until it's gone. Really interestingly, there was a 75-year cohort study. So cohort just means a longitudinal study, so done over time, and you're following a certain group of people. And what they found in the study was that the single most important predictor of happiness and longevity was having social connections. Huge. So we know that it feels good to have social connections, and this just shows how important that is. We know that connectivity actually activates your parasympathetic nervous system. So if you are familiar with the terms, the sympathetic nervous system is, now I'm trying to remember.
Fight or flight.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Olson. Fight or flight. So that's the stressful response. Whereas your parasympathetic is rest and digest. It's when your body is relaxed and it knows that it can just not have to worry about a bear running in and grabbing you. So being connected with people actually activates that more calming parasympathetic system. Now, I've been asked, okay, so social connectedness, does that mean that social media actually benefits our health by having ways to connect with people all over the world? And unfortunately, it's just not true. It's just not the same. So there was a study that showed that for the highest quartile of social media use, those people had significantly higher rates of depression compared to those who had the lowest amount of social media use. So social media is not something that you can use to get that social connectedness. You really need to have that actual, talking with someone either in person or on the phone, having that real relationship. And that's everything that I have for the lifestyle medicine 6 pillars. So I just wanted to say thank you. You've got my website there. You can follow me on Instagram or Facebook. And I am going to be answering questions, but we're going to have Dr. Olson talk first. And once he's done talking, then we will do a quick Q&A together. So I'll hand it back over to Harriet, who's going to talk about Dr. Olson.
Great. Hello, everyone. Did you stop sharing there, Nikki?
Yes. Let's see here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Davis, for that really great overview. And, it's interesting because I have seen, the same things that you talked about, certainly talking about with healthy plant-based nutrition, stress management, which Marty's going to be talking about a little bit later today, sleep, exercise, and really the social connections, which I think, unfortunately, so many of us has been challenging. We just really haven't been able to do over the past year or so. So I think that's a great overview. And really that's something, some very tangible, specific strategies that people can, can leave the meeting with and start to implement, and certainly follow up with you with any additional guidance or assistance that they may need. And so for real quickly, for folks who have joined us since the start of the meeting, my name is Harriet Emerson, group leader for Salt Lake Thrive, a local community group in Salt Lake. And we're all about helping people be aware of the many benefits of healthy plant-based nutrition, which we're talking about today, certainly for our health, as Dr. Davis just talked about, Dr. Olson would be talking about, and for our planet. And then also certainly for creating a more compassionate world for millions of animals. So once again, we're so happy that so many of us could join us today. I think we have a full house at 100 people, and also people with us on Facebook. And so anyway, we're going to go ahead and start with Dr. Patrick Olson. And Patrick, maybe you'll start sharing whenever you're ready to start sharing your screen. I think we still have Dr. Davis's screen. There we go. So I'll do a real brief introduction of Dr. Olson, and he can tell you more about his background. But Dr. Olson is an orthopedic surgeon. He's here in Utah. He's at the Rosenberg Cooley Metcalf Clinic in Park City, Utah. Dr. Olson, he has a master's in public health and also a doctor of medicine, a degree at the University of Utah School of Medicine. Dr. Olson, also how I became aware of Dr. Olson, he is, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but he's one of the co-founders of Plant-Based Utah. And they're a great local nonprofit, and they do a lot of work also building awareness of the benefits and the importance of a healthy plant-based lifestyle. And typically they have ongoing events, including annual symposium. Unfortunately, they weren't able to do last fall, but hopefully they'll be able to resume it later this year. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Dr. Patrick Olson.
Thanks, Harry. I really appreciate that. Nikki, that was a great talk. So yeah, just a little of my background again. So I grew up in Utah, and I'm an orthopedic surgeon right now, Rosenberg Cooley Metcalf Clinic. So my specialty is actually elbow, wrist, and hand surgery. I do a lot of trauma surgery. I'm on call actually this weekend. We do a lot of ski trauma. You can imagine we get quite a bit up here. So after I went to medical school, University of Utah, just like Nikki, And I did my residency at Dartmouth in New Hampshire, and my residency was in orthopedic surgery. In between my second and third years of residency, I obtained a master's of science in healthcare leadership from the Dartmouth Institute. And then following that, that residency in 2011, I did a fellowship in hand and microsurgery and elbow surgery from Columbia in New York. So it was on New York when I was in Manhattan. I came across this documentary called Forks Over Knives. Some of you have probably seen that documentary. And when I saw it, I didn't really want to believe it, but I was pretty impressed by it. And I just started reading research like crazy. And that's what kind of got me into this. But I've always been interested in health and nutrition and those kind of things, but that really got me into this plant-based thing. And I grew up hunting elk and deer. So for me, it was a big change that I'll talk to you about just a little bit later. And then following Columbia, we came out here to Park City, and we've been here in Park City ever since 2012. So happy to be here. And I love orthopedic surgery, but this is kind of more of a hobby. I love nutrition and wellness. So I'm going to talk to you today more about the why a whole food plant-based diet. So Dr. Davis did a great job and kind of gave an overview of lifestyle medicine, but my focus is plant-based nutrition. So we always ask the question is, what is the ideal diet for human health? And this is a big debate I even had with a patient who's probably listening right now because he's getting all kinds of different messages. So is it the Mediterranean diet? So Mediterranean diet, you probably heard about this, is kind of a base of grains, fruits, and vegetables, which is great. They recommend everyday milk consumption and some oil and some fish and some eggs and some meat weekly and those kind of things. Or is it the choose my plate diet? So this is the government-based diet. Instead of a meat a food group, they've now called it protein, which is interesting that they have made a little bit of a shift. But they have this dairy side. They recommend dairy. But remember, those that come up with these recommendations, the USDA stands for United States Department of Agriculture. And so they not only give diet and nutrition recommendations, but they have they're duty bound to promote meat and dairy. So it's a little bit of a conflict there. And then you have the paleo diet. So the paleo diet was really popular for a time. You're not hearing it quite as much, but it's still very popular, with a base of the paleo diet being meat and fish. And then you have this really, really popular diet. It's probably the most popular right now. It's the ketogenic diet or the keto diet. So this is just based predominantly on fat. So 70% of your diet should come from fat and meat protein. And then just a very small percent on carbohydrates. And because the keto diet is so popular, I just want to spend a little time on keto diet, just because I'm sure there's people who are listening right now who are either on the keto diet or have friends or family members on the keto diet. So let's talk a little bit about keto diet before I continue. So first of all, this is just going into what's called the citric acid cycle, also known as the Krebs cycle, the tricarboxylic acid cycle, the TCA cycle. So this is how our cells produce energy. So they produce energy by way of what's called ATP. So we get our energy through carbohydrates and then get digested into turns into glucose. And so glucose is the primary source of energy for our cells. And then glucose then turns into eventually ATP when it goes through this citric acid cycle. If you deprive the body of glucose and carbohydrates, then your body starts burning these fatty acids, this fat, and this fat then turns into ketones. And so your body gets in a state called ketosis, and that's where the body then gets energy. It's basically an emergency state. Your body uses this during starvation. It turns into ketones for energy. And so that's what that is. So this is from the Harvard School of Public Health. And they said the premise of the ketogenic diet for weight loss is that if you deprive the body of glucose, as I mentioned, the main source of energy for all cells in the body, which is obtained by eating carbohydrate foods, an alternative fuel called ketones is produced from stored fat. And that's why it's called the ketogenic diet. So is it healthy? Like, is this a good thing to do? So according to the Harvard School of Public Health, there's many pitfalls. So this is right out of them. I just quoted them directly. So some negative side effects for a long-term ketogenic diet have been suggested, including increased risk of kidney stones and osteoporosis. This is something I see as an orthopedic surgeon. Increased blood levels of uric acid is a risk factor for gout. I see that quite a bit too. And possible nutrition deficiencies may arise. And you can get nutrition deficiencies in any diet. Even a vegan diet is not necessarily a healthy diet. And that's why I think Dr. Davis did a great job in explaining a whole food plant-based diet. I mean, you can eat chips and Diet Coke and Oreos, and that's vegan, but there's nothing healthy about that. So bottom line, according to them, the keto diet has had the available research is actually limited. So most of the studies, if you really look at those ketogenic diet studies, are about a year. It has been shown to provide short-term benefits. So some people are listening, it's like, I've lost weight on a keto diet. My blood glucose is stabilized, my blood pressure has come down. And that is true that you can have short-term benefits from a ketogenic diet. An emphasis on foods high in saturated fat also runs counter to recommendations from the American Heart Association. So are there any long-term studies to say that it's not healthy and it's dangerous? The answer is yes. So this came out in 2019, so not too long ago. And this is a great study from the European Society of Cardiology. And they had basically a combination of two different studies. They had 25,000 participants from United States, a health survey study with their follow-up of 6 years, and 460,000 participants in pooled data from 9 prospective cohort studies with an average follow-up of 16 years. So what they really wanted to look at is what are the long-term side effects of doing a low-carb diet? And that's what these are. Paleo is low carb, keto is low carb, Atkins is low carb. What's the long-term data on low-carb diets? So what they found from at least the United States data is participants with the lowest carbohydrate diet have the highest overall mortality rate, the highest cardiovascular disease, the highest cerebrovascular disease, which are things like stroke, and the highest deaths from cancer, those who follow a low-carb diet over a 6-year time frame. And it's even stronger for patients who are non-obese. So if you have any non-obese friends or family members who are following a keto diet, that's even more dangerous. And then if you looked at the pool data from the 9 prospective cohort studies of over 400,000 people, there was a positive correlation between a low-carb diet and overall mortality and dying from cancer and cardiovascular disease. So the author, one of the lead authors, Professor Banach, said this, quote, low carbohydrate diets might be useful in the short term to lose weight, lower blood pressure, and improve blood glucose control. But our studies suggest that in the long term, they're linked with an increased risk of death from any cause, deaths due to cardiovascular disease, cerebrovascular disease, and cancer. These findings suggest that low carbohydrate diets are unsafe and should not be recommended. These diets should be avoided. So I completely agree with that. So what is the ideal diet then? So it's very controversial. Discussions can get extremely heated, as you can imagine. It's almost as sensitive as politics and religion. And we'll never fully know because the best study can't ever be done. It has to be pretty complicated because you have to have, before women become pregnant, and then while they're pregnant, and then the kids following pregnancy have to follow the diet. So there's a lot of confounders in any study you do. So you really can't do the absolute best study. So I'm going to give you my opinion and my interpretation of the research pointing to what I think is the healthiest diet. And a couple disclaimers. I am not a dietitian. I'm a bonehead orthopedic surgeon. And I grew up hunting elk and deer, as I mentioned, and fishing for trout and salmon. It's kind of in my blood. It's interesting how I don't really miss meat, but I do definitely miss hunting on some level for sure. So this is a picture of just a dinner we had recently. I just wanted to show a picture of this. So this is on a bed of brown rice and potatoes, a whole bunch of veggies with tofu teriyaki. So this is just an example of something we eat in our family. And we had this just a couple of like a week ago or so. And just look at the colors on that. There's like all these marvelous colors from all this living plant food that looks so marvelous. But unfortunately, as Americans, don't eat this way on average. In fact, most of us are eating as if we know we're going to die. And why do I say that? So this is an actual picture of a serial killer by the name of Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy was charged with rape and 35 counts of murder. And this was his actual picture of his last meal before he died. Does this look somewhat familiar to a standard American diet? So there was actually a study looking at this. So a study that came out in 2012, they looked at the final food requests of almost 250 individuals who were executed in the United States during a 5-year period. And what did they find? They found that the average last meal was very caloric rich. Does that sound familiar? And averaged 2.5 times the daily recommended servings of protein and fat. So a low carb diet is what most people before they were going to die wanted to eat. The most frequent requests are meat, right? So that makes sense. Fried food, desserts, and soft drinks. Those are the most frequent food requests for people who are going to die on death row. So I just want you to, when you look at your plates, I want you to look at, does my plate and the food I'm eating, does it represent life or does it represent death? Do I have these living, healthy plant foods on my plate, or do I have a dead cow on my plate? And I think I think the research is going to support this that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. So in my mind, the ideal diet is a whole food plant-based diet, and that's one that promotes the increased consumption of leafy greens, vegetables, fruits, legumes, whole grains as staple foods, and minimizes or eliminates animal-based foods, including dairy and eggs, and processed foods, and such as trying your best to limit added sugar, salt, and oil, in which Nikki talked about. According to the Physicians Committee of Responsible Medicine, a group of physicians in DC, they said these should be the 4 food groups: fruits, grains, legumes, and vegetables. That's it. There's no dairy, there's no meat. It's fruits, grains, legumes, and vegetables. But why? So where are they coming up with this idea? This is based on population-based studies. I'm going to talk a little bit about individual-based studies, case control, randomized control trials. And it's the only diet to show reversal of chronic diseases that I'm going to talk to you about, at least in the long run. And even if the above evidence isn't enough, it's the best diet for the planet that I'll finish up with. So let's talk a little bit about population-based studies. So there's this concept called blue zones, and hopefully several of you have heard about this. This is a National Geographic study where they looked at areas on the planet that people live the longest and have the less health conditions, like the less medical comorbidities. And they identified 5 blue zones on the planet. So Loma Linda, California, the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica, Sardinia, Italy, and Icaria, Greece, and Okinawa, Japan. So these are the 5 blue zones. And they all have very unique things that are unique to them, but they're all things in common. So when you kind of look at a Venn diagram, looking at some of these, you know, in Italy, they do things a little different like they do in Japan and Loma Linda, California. But what they all have in common, if you look at the very center, they all have in common that they don't smoke and they follow a plant-based diet. And as Nikki said, there's physical activity, social engagement, and they do a lot of beans. Okinawa, Japan, it'd be soybeans, but they do a lot of beans in these places. So a plant-based diet is what they all have in common. So if you go to the Blue Zones website and you look at what they recommend based on their studies, that 95% of our diet should be plant-based, 95%, and only about 5%, if that, can be animal-based. So it's really just, it's really a plant-based diet that's almost exclusively plant-based. So if you look at the healthiest blue zone in America, healthiest blue zone is Loma Linda, California. Well, what's unique about Loma Linda, California? Well, they have a predominant religion there. They're known as the Seventh-day Adventists, who are encouraged to be a vegetarian based on their law of health. So when you look at the healthiest population in America, there's a study that looked at this, over 70,000 Seventh-day Adventists over about a 5-year time frame. And then they divided these Seventh-day Adventists based upon their diet pattern. So just like anyone, they have different interpretations of their law of health. And they have, so if you look at they divide it into non-vegetarians, those that eat meat, semi-vegetarian, a little bit, pesco-vegetarian, they ate some fish, lacto-ovo-vegetarian are those Seventh-day Adventists, they ate some eggs and dairy. And then you have the vegans that didn't eat any animal products. So now let's look at it. So let's look at body mass index. So that's kind of a measure of your weight, height ratio. And if you look at the body mass index, the more these Seventh-day Adventists eliminated animal products from their diet, the skinnier they were. The vegans being the skinniest and going down. What about diabetes? You're seeing the same gradient, that the more the healthiest population in America eliminated animal products, the less their prevalence of diabetes. What about high blood pressure? Kind of the same thing. The ones that have the lowest high blood pressure were the vegans. So again, this idea that the more you eliminate animal products from your diet in the healthiest population in America, the healthier they were. So what about case control and prospective studies? So let's specifically look at this with our biggest killer, heart disease. So heart disease is the #1 killer cause of death globally. So #1, 17 million people die every single year, which is about 50,000 people die from heart disease every day. That's about 7 million from coronary heart disease and 6 million due to stroke, which stroke is still a cardiovascular disease. And that's estimated to reach 23 million by 2030. So this, unfortunately, the number one cause of death just keeps getting worse. So I want to put this into context a little bit. So if we look at this awful pandemic that all we've been through, this COVID-19 pandemic, as of March of this year, since January, there've been about 2.5 million deaths, which is awful. And if you kind of average that out, it's about 6,000 deaths a day. So it's been tragic how many people have died from COVID-19. But if we compare that to heart disease, so there's on average 50,000 deaths from heart disease and 6,000 deaths a day from COVID. And I'm not trying to minimize how awful COVID has been. But just to give you a perspective, there's been on average 8 times more people die every day from heart disease than COVID. I wish we had just as much urgency and emphasis on heart disease as we do on COVID. Unfortunately, that's not the case. So the real danger to Americans is not as much this, but it's these characters. So it's this type of diet, the standard American diet, that's killing us by far higher percentages than the COVID-19 virus. Furthermore, a plant-based diet is the only diet which is shown to reverse our heart disease. So I've heard it said, and I love this quote, but if it's the only diet to show reversal of our number one killer, which it has, then shouldn't it be our default diet until proven otherwise? I mean, again, if it's the only diet that's shown reversal of our number one killer, there's no question, at least in my mind, that it should be our default diet until somebody proves otherwise. So this has been shown way back in 1998. So we've had this for a long time. D. Ornish at a UCSF, he found that a plant-based diet reversed coronary atherosclerosis after 5 years compared to the control group. Also more profound, which I think is pretty awesome, is Dr. Esselstyn. He is at a Cleveland clinic, and he has shown in a pretty remarkable way reversal of heart disease. And he has in his paper just a couple examples. So on the left is what's called a PET scan. So that looks at cardio perfusion or blood supply within a heart. So on the upper left, the red represents the blood flow within heart muscle. And that's before the patient started a plant-based diet. And then the bottom left is 3 weeks after following a plant-based diet. I mean, look at an amazing improvement of heart flow, of blood flow in the heart, just truly incredible. Then the picture on your right is what's called an angiogram. So an angiogram looks at the blood flow within a heart muscle, and then of heart arteries. And then on the left picture, that's before, and then after, and on the right is following 32 months of a plant-based diet. You can see almost a complete opening up of that blood vessel without any cholesterol-lowering medication. There's no statins. This is all diet. This is remarkable. I mean, truly, truly miraculous that no other diet has ever shown this, which is amazing. So, but everyone asks, like, let's say we all went plant-based. Everyone's going to ask this, and someone's going to ask this today. So I'm going to go over this right now. But where do you get your protein? Like, if you don't eat meat, where are you going to get your protein? So let's talk a little bit about protein. So protein is a combination of amino acids. It's either you have essential amino acids and your non-essential amino acids. All essential amino acids have to be obtained from our diet. The non-essential your body can make, but the essential ones you have to get from your diet. All essential amino acids don't originate from animals. So I want to say that again. All essential amino acids don't originate from animals. They originate from plants and microbes, and the animals eat them, and then we eat the animal. So yes, it's true that the animals assimilate these amino acids in a full protein chain. And then when we eat the animal, we eat the meat, it is more efficient because they have the full protein chain. So your body has to work a little bit harder. So, but it's not, I mean, but just to highlight that point, that all essential amino acids originate from plants and microbes. So, and then if we look at this overemphasis of protein, so there's the estimated and the recommended average requirement of protein. So according to the estimated average requirement, about 0.5 grams of protein per kilogram body weight, or on average, about 4 to 5% of your total calories should come from protein. That's it. That's really all you need To be on the safe side, though, with the recommended, they got the estimated average requirement, and they added 2 standard deviations just to make sure you included 99.9999% of everyone. And that's on average about 8 to 10% of your total calories should come from protein. That's not very much. So to give you an idea, this is the World Health Organization. These are all the essential amino acids like tryptophan, phenylalanine, leucine. If you eat plenty of corn and brown rice and potatoes and broccoli, all of those have plenty of the essential amino acids to meet your daily requirement. So you wouldn't think corn would, you wouldn't think brown rice or potatoes or broccoli, but they do. So protein deficiency, Kwashiorkor's disease, is just almost unheard of. So this is a funny cartoon that I love. So this is a ferret. So a ferret is an obligate carnivore. So ferret only eats animals. Talking to a big gorilla, muscular gorilla that eats plants, and says, "No meat at all. Are you sure you're getting enough protein?" It's this weird idea that the meat and dairy industry has done a great job in making us think that we can only get protein from meat. And that's just not true. So this is an example I love to show. This is Nehemiah Delgado. He's a 100% plant-based bodybuilder. He has never eaten meat in his life. So I think everyone would agree with me. He's pretty muscular, and he has never eaten meat in his life. His parents were hippies. He didn't eat meat. He did dairy and eggs, he admitted, before when he was younger. So maybe that had something to do with it. I don't think so, though, because he's been plant-based for quite some time. He doesn't eat meat. But does protein matter? So the type of protein, does it matter? Actually, it does matter. So this just came out just fresh off the press, February 2021. Good Morning America even spent some time talking about this. So they looked at over 100,000 postmenopausal women. They followed them over quite a long period of time through February of 2017. And they wanted to specifically look at their death rate in regards to where their sources of protein came from. Well, what did they find? Comparing to the highest with the lowest, plant protein intake was inversely associated with all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease mortality, and dementia mortality. What does that mean? So what it means is the more plant protein in your diet, the lower your risk of death from those diseases, heart disease and dementia. So, and this is what they did. They did this, is what's called in substitution analysis. Substituting of animal protein with plant protein was associated with a lower risk of all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease mortality, dementia mortality. And when you substitute red meat, eggs, or dairy with nuts, it was associated with a lower risk of all-cause mortality. So yes, it does matter where you get your protein, and it should be from plants. So what about cancer? So cancer is our #2 cause of death. According to the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research, they said, quote, that there is strong evidence that consuming red meat increases the risk of colorectal cancer, and that processed meat increases the risk of colorectal cancer. And then Cantonese style salted fish, it's a way they process and cure the fish, increases the risk of nasopharyngeal cancer. So they classified red meat and processed meat as a carcinogen. According to the American Institute for Cancer Research, they recommend, quote, eat a diet rich in whole grains, vegetables, fruits, and beans. So to really prevent and treat cancer, this is what your diet should be. And I'm a cancer survivor myself. So they said, here are the foods that recommend that we should eat to prevent cancer and to fight cancer. So look at blueberries, broccoli, cranberries, oranges, kale, grapes, grapefruit, squash, spinach, whole grains, walnuts. So do you see any animal product at all on this list? I mean, I was trying to look to see if they had anything that was an animal product that would help fight cancer, and there's nothing on this. This is right off their website as well. They said an estimated 40% of all cancer cases can be prevented. 40%, that's huge. Eating a healthy diet, being more active, maintaining a healthy weight are also important ways. And then if you look at what they said, specifically our focus should be on fiber. This is key to look at cancer prevention. Aim for foods high in fiber. So these are the kind of foods that are really great at killing and fighting cancer. Fiber and phytonutrients. It's all these marvelous colors in these plants, and it's fiber. So what's fiber? So fiber is what's in a plant that give the plant that strength against gravity. So humans or animals have bones, and plants have fiber. And we're all like 98% of Americans are fiber deficient. And we don't ask, where do you get your protein? We should be asking, well, where do you get your fiber? Because everyone's fiber deficient, but no one, I don't know of any American, I've never seen it in all my years as in training and as a physician, I've never seen a patient with fiber deficiency. I know people are listening to this saying they disagree, but Kwashiorkor's disease is really what fiber deficiency is. And I've never seen that. You'll see that in Africa.
Sorry, Dr. Olson, you mean protein deficiency. You said fiber deficiency.
Oh, sorry, protein deficiency. That's right. Kwashiorkor's disease. I have spent a little time in Africa, and I've seen kids, but they were more extremely malnourished, didn't have any food. This is a great study looking at protein and cancer. So what they found, here's what they found first of all. So there's a hormone called IGF-1, and they found that when you restrict protein, that IGF-1 activity goes down, and IGF-1 is really important for the growth of cancer cells. So they said, well, that's interesting. So now let's look at how that relates to humans. So they looked over 6,000 adults over an 18-year time frame using that national data bank on health nutrition surveys. And they divided people up into 3 groups of protein intake. The low protein intake were less than 10%, moderate were 10 to 19%, and high is greater than 20%, which is a huge chunk of Americans. And what did they find? They found that participants, at least aged 50 to 65, reporting a high protein intake had a 75% increased risk in overall mortality and a 4-fold increase in cancer during 18 years. 75% increase is about the equivalent of smoking. I mean, that is a huge difference from the high protein compared to the low protein groups. But here's what else they found. Quote, these associations were either abolished or attenuated if these proteins were plant derived. So if you got your protein from plants, then your increased risk of death or cancer didn't happen. Conversely, high protein intake was associated with reduced cancer overall mortality in respondents over 65. So patients who are older than 65, your diet can change a little bit, but again, you can get that protein not necessarily from animal products. Going plant-based will also help the microbiome in your GI tract. We're learning all this great research on the incredible symbiotic relationship we have with our gut bacteria and our overall health. So a study came out just last year when they summarized all the human data so far on dietary fiber and gut microbiome. They said, taken together, these papers on which the current review is based suggest that dietary fiber has a potential to change the gut microbiota and alter metabolic regulation. Fiber is key in helping your gut. And then this awesome article that came out in the New England Journal of Medicine in 2013. So here's what they looked at. So they looked at when you eat something called phosphatidylcholine, which is prominently found in animal products, that eventually goes to your gut. And then your gut produces a substance called trimethylamine. And that becomes oxidized in your liver to form trimethylamine oxide, also known as TMAO, which then leads to stroke, heart attack, and death. So there's a direct link between TMAO and stroke, heart attack, and death, our #1 killer. And so when they looked at just kind of overall risk over a time frame of 3 years, those that had the highest levels of TMAO in their blood formed from their gut bacteria from eating phosphatidylcholine in your diet, compared to the lowest, is quite significant. So their the chances of having an MI, stroke, or death is about 20%, compared to about 6% in the lowest quartile, over 4,000 participants. So then the study in Nature came out where they got animal products. When you feed animal products to an omnivore, that creates TMAO. So this is somebody who eats meat. And then that, as we know, leads to heart disease. But then they decided to give animal products to a vegan. So someone had been vegan for a period of time. And what they found is they were not capable of producing TMAO. That is incredible. That's just an indication that your gut bacteria changes based on your diet. And they were not capable of making the TMAO, therefore significantly decreasing your risk of heart attack. And again, this is your gut bacteria that leads to heart disease based upon your diet, which is truly remarkable. So what if I told you, just to transition the last part of my talk, what if I told you that the best diet for your body is also the best diet for the planet? And if you think about it from like you can look at it as a spiritual perspective, you can look at it in a holistic perspective, that it makes sense that there'd be this symbiotic relationship, or this relationship with our overall health of our bodies with the health of the planet. And I think in my mind, there's no question. So let's say everything I've said is not true. All the stuff I've said about overall health and personal health is not true. One of the biggest reasons you can go into this eating a plant-based lifestyle is for the planet. And let me talk to you about why that's the case. This data started coming out in 2006 when the United Nations put up this pretty strong report called Livestock's Long Shadow. And they talked about the horrible environmental destruction that happens as we raise animals for food. And why is that the case? So the United Nations in 2018, they said every bite of burger boosts harmful greenhouse gases. So they said, according to the United Nations Environmental Agency, quote, as humans, meat production is one of the most destructive ways in which humans leave their footprint on the planet. 2019 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is part of UN, they said that we should be eating less meat. This is a cattle farmer in northern Brazil. It's emission intensive. It often occupies large scale deforestation because everyone's got to have their grass-fed beef, right? So you've got to destroy the rainforest to be able to graze the cattle, and you have to be able to raise the grain and the crops to feed the cattle. So they're destroying the rainforest in Brazil just so of our insatiable desire for meat. This article came out in Nature, and what they looked at the question is, what happened if people ate less meat? So this graph represents the amount of CO2, the gigatons of CO2 equivalents that the world saves when you go more of a plant-based diet. So if you don't eat any animal products, you're saving the world, what is it? It's 8 gigatons of CO2 equivalents. You go down to meat once a month, and you can save a little under 6 gigatons. You limit meat and dairy, it just kind of keeps going down. So again, this idea that the more animal products you eliminate from your diet, the less, the more CO2 emissions that you save. Raising animal for food is responsible for a lot of things. Let's talk about these things. It's responsible for climate change. So this comes out of this great documentary called Cowspiracy. Keegan Kuhn is a guy that we've had speak at our conference a few times now. And so this data, they found that global greenhouse gas emissions, 51% of global greenhouse gas emissions come from livestock and their byproducts, whereas about 13% come from all cars, trains, planes combined. So yes, we have to be really cautious. And I love the fact that we're transitioning to electric cars, but it's not nearly as pronounced as we can just do a plant-based diet. So hopefully we can do both. A plant-based diet cuts your carbon footprint by 50%. And livestock is responsible for about 65% of nitrous oxide. So nitrous oxide is another greenhouse gas, and it's almost 300 times more destructive than CO2. What about water use? So it's a leading cause of water use. So one hamburger is the equivalent of 660 gallons of water. Cows are so incredibly inefficient as far as a protein source for water. That's the equivalent of 2 months of showering. So in these areas like ours, we're in a desert, desert areas that we're so concerned about wasting water, but we're not talking about the fact that one hamburger is worth 660 gallons of water. And we should be severely restricting animal products just for water usage. So meat and dairy uses 1/3 of Earth's fresh water. So again, to give you a comparison, all domestic water usage, including water in your lawn, is about 5% versus 55% in animal agriculture. That includes feeding the cows and the chickens, and also watering the crops to feed the cows and the chickens and the pigs. Also waste, it's the leading of waste. When we talk waste, we're talking about feces. Waste from a dairy farm of 250 dairy cows is the equivalent of a city of over 400,000 people. I mean, what are we going to do with all that crap, right? So that's a credible amount of waste. So every minute there's 7 million pounds of excrement produced by animals raised for food in the United States. Every minute, 7 million pounds of excrement. And just to give you a personal example of how that affects things, well, I'll do in just a second because it has to do with this next point. Land use, 1/3 of land is desertified due to livestock. We're destroying the land because we're grazing all these animals. So 45% of livestock covers livestock covers about 45% of the Earth's total land. It's incredible how inefficient all this is. So this is a personal example. So we went backpacking up in the north slope of the Uintas, and you can see this is a pretty picturesque pasture that looks like there's lots of places to put these tents. Do you know how hard it was to find spaces to put our tents? And why was that the case? Because there was these cow patties everywhere. In fact, we had to move some cow patties just to put these 2 tents on there. And unfortunately, just the grazing of these cows and these animals are destroying our lands because, again, for an insatiable desire for meat. What about fisheries? So 90 million tons of fish are pulled from our oceans each year. 90 million tons. I mean, imagine that. It's estimated that 3/4 of the world's fisheries are exploited. And for every pound of fish caught, there's 5 pounds of unintended bykill. So other things like turtles and dolphins and sharks and things like that are killed for every pound of fish caught because of these big nets. And also it's a leading cause of species extinction. So 110 animals and insect species are lost every day from the rainforest. We're destroying the rainforest at such a high rate, again, for our insatiable desire for meat. And it's a leading cause of ocean dead zones, water pollution, and habitat destruction. It's also a leading cause of deforestation, as we talked about. 1 to 2 acres of rainforest are cleared every second because of animal agriculture. It's responsible for 90% of Amazon destruction, 90%. We kind of blame a lot on palm oil, and palm oil is very destructive. It's destroys 26 million acres, but compared to animal agriculture, it's not even close. There's 5 times more destruction of rainforest because of animal agriculture. This is a quote from James Cameron. He's a director. He's done like Avatar and Titanic and all those movies, and he's a big proponent of this. And he said this, he said, quote, "Almost every major environmental problem could be solved by a global shift toward plant-based eating." Almost every major environmental problem. And I agree with that. Albert Einstein, I think most people agree he's pretty smart. I love to close with his quote. He's pretty amazing. And this is what he said way back a long time ago. "Nothing will benefit human health and increase the chances for survival of life on Earth as much as the evolution to a vegetarian diet." Again, let me kind of emphasize that again. Nothing will benefit human health. So he's addressing the human health factor of this and increase the chances for survival of life on the Earth. He's talking about the environmental perspective of this as much as our evolution to a vegetarian diet. So we need to evolve. We need to press forward. I think that some of these movements, such as the paleo movement, wants us to regress back to the Paleolithic period, where the average lifespan was like 20-something years of age. That we need to evolve. We need to push forward and progress. And I agree with Einstein on this. So based on that, my partner, Tom Rosenberg, formed this group called Plant-Based Utah and advocating for a whole food plant-based diet. We founded it in 2017. Our mission is to improve health through sharing evidence-based information initiatives with advocate for a whole food plant-based lifestyle. We're pushing pretty hard on clinicians, and this next year we're hoping to get a bunch of doctors on board on this because, as you've all probably experienced, there's not many Nikki Davises in the world, and we need more. Hopefully we'll have a Utah symposium hopefully this fall. We'll see how things go. And this is a final picture of our family. So my wife and I have these 4 kids, and yes, we do raise our 4 kids on a plant-based lifestyle. They're all very active and healthy. Our daughter, who's standing by me, she's almost taller than me. She grew up without eating dairy, and amazingly, she's grown just great. Same with her other kids. They're active in sports, lacrosse, soccer, tennis, ballet, you name it. So, and we seem to be doing just fine. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Olson, for really that master class on just so much of the evidence and research that you mentioned and the various studies, including a very recent one I believe you discussed from earlier this year. And I also really appreciate your your discussion of the impact on our planet as well, because we're only as healthy as our planet that we live on. And like the mention of Salt Lake Thrives has helped people be aware of the benefits, many benefits of healthy plant-based nutrition for our health and the planet, which you addressed in great detail, and the animals, of course. And I really like how you personalized it with your experience, not only the studies and what have you, but your experience camping. Because some of us who live in the West are very familiar with how our public lands, there's a lot of grazing and what have you. So I think that probably really helped to bring it home to people. Maybe other people have had similar experiences. So if folks want to start, if they have any questions for either Dr. Olson or Dr. Davis, you can put those in the chat. And I see we have some questions coming in. But I really love, Dr. Olson, how you addressed the protein. And I questioned when I started telling people, I'm sure everyone's had this experience. People who had never expressed, family and friends, about asked me questions about my nutrition and vitamins. The first question they ask is, are you getting enough protein? So I'm really glad you addressed that. And I hopefully you ease any concerns that anyone participating with us might have if they're considering transitioning to, or they're already on a whole food plant-based diet, that they really don't need to worry. They're eating food and they're eating a healthy, well-balanced diet, that they're getting enough protein. So that's always great to lay that myth to rest. So like I say, I know probably people have a lot of questions, so we'll get started. So we have Carol wants to know, when do people in keto diets begin to see health problems? Same with paleo. So how long after, which I did, I admit, doing the keto years and years ago, oh my goodness, no carbs and eat the protein. So how long can people do that before they start to see some real impact on their health?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at kind of the studies that I talked about, so most of the studies are short term, so about a year or so. So if you look at the other studies I shared with you, that was like 6 years. So we don't know. So I would just say, you can probably start feeling health problems if you're not careful within a couple of weeks, even a couple of days. But at the same time, some people say they feel great about it. I have an ENT surgeon who I operate on same kind of day on Tuesdays, and he was a big keto guy. He's since kind of gone away from that, but he's a big health nut, and he loved his keto diet for a time frame. So I think a lot of people, again, like all of these things, there's so many short-term things that can maybe make people feel better for a short term. But again, we want to look at the long term. We have to look at our health from birth to death. And I hope we are going to think about our long term. And if you remember what I shared with you, that studies is that significantly higher risk of cardiovascular disease, death after about 6 years is what that study showed. But just don't do it. Nikki, did you have thoughts on that?
Well, I was going to say, also important to talk about is that when you do change over from a meat-heavy, fat, protein-heavy diet over to a whole food plant-based diet that's high in carbohydrates, you're going to start noticing differences immediately. Your body immediately starts to heal itself. And so if you're thinking about, well, how long does it take for me to have damage from the keto diet? Even more importantly is, if you stop that keto diet today and start a whole food plant-based diet, your body is going to start healing. It's the same thing for smoking. We know this, that the day that people stop smoking, you start having benefits to your lungs and to your body. And it's the same thing with a whole food plant-based diet. So even if you've been doing keto for 10 years, which I don't know how anybody can live on a keto diet for 10 years, it sounds like misery to me. But if you start eating plant-based today, you're going to see benefits immediately.
So thank you for those responses. So we have Amy is asking, does coconut milk, the light version, count as an oil? And I've heard discussions in another group about, potential issues with using coconut milk, but she's wondering, the light version, does that count as an oil, or is it suitable for a whole food plant-based diet?
I can talk about this. So coconut milk is, I wouldn't call it an oil, because it's a milk. You're using the coconut meat to make a milk. You're squeezing it out. And so you are getting some of the nutrients and the fiber from the coconut. It's not super processed. But you have to remember that, unfortunately, how delicious coconut is, it's very high in saturated fat. I think it's 92% saturated fat, which we know saturated fat is not good for the heart. It's not good for your vessels. So if you're looking at a whole food plant-based diet, I think having a little bit of coconut here and there that's more in the whole form, like where you either eat some coconut meat or you have a little bit of coconut milk, is okay. But I wouldn't recommend it as part of your main diet, your daily diet. Just more of a treat here and there, I think should be fine.
Yeah, I agree with that. And there's a lot of questions also just about these vegan meats and cheeses. Nikki actually did a great job addressing that. Again, those really are not healthy. So there's so concentrated oils. There's all kinds of oils in that. There's a really heavy in sodium in those things. So just be really careful. Like I agree with what Nikki said earlier about those vegan meat and cheeses, is that they're good for the planet. They're good for animals, but you got to be really careful of those ones because they're not necessarily healthy. And there was a study that came out from American Journal of Cardiology where they found that people who ate what's called an unhealthy plant-based index, meaning that they ate a lot of these processed plant-based foods, were actually worse off than those that ate some animal products. And so for as far as heart disease goes, so please be careful on some of those fake meats and cheeses. I mean, some of those cheeses, like cashews and those kind of things, maybe they're not as bad, but just be cautious. And I think they're okay transition foods. And if you're doing a little bit, but just be really cautious of those.
And I really appreciate that perspective, both from Dr. Olson and Dr. Davis, because how many times have we seen a celebrity and they'll go vegan and then, oh my goodness, it failed. And then you get into a whole controversy and what have you, where they really didn't have a resource like Dr. Olson or Dr. Davis or access to other resources to take the time to figure out how to do it successfully. Like you said, Dr. Olson, the Beyond Burger or the Field Roast or some of those products as a transitional food, as a stepping stone, as a once in a while food, but the really emphasis, as you guys have so discussed so well, should be on the whole food, plant-based food products. And even with that, there's a huge amount. I think you showed a beautiful plate of food, Dr. Olson, that just shows how delicious and beautiful that can be. We have a question from Karen. Is there any improvement in joint health with a whole food diet? Dr. Olson, you may want to lead off on that.
Yeah, the answer is yes. And we don't have the time to go over this in detail. I wanted to, but I decided not to because I didn't have enough time. But a plant-based diet is really the most anti-inflammatory diet by far. So a couple of reasons why that's the case. So one, if you look at kind of the inflammatory cascade that happens in our bodies, it all starts with a substance called arachidonic acid. The way anti-inflammatories work, such as ibuprofen, Aleve, hopefully you guys have all heard of these medications, those things work by blocking an enzyme that converts arachidonic acid into the byproducts that contribute to the inflammatory cascade that happens in our bodies. So you can take anti-inflammatories with all their side effects, and there's a lot of them, or you can just not eat arachidonic acid. It's just omega-6 fatty acid. So where does that come from? So the National Cancer Institute was also interested in that question. So using National Cancer Institute research, and they found that arachidonic acid is predominantly found in animal products. The number one source of arachidonic acid in American diet is chicken. So chicken's number one. Number two is eggs, and then three is red meat. So that's one reason. So one is just this, it's a source of pro-inflammatory arachidonic acid. And then two, on the flip side, Mother Nature's anti-inflammatories are these powerful phytonutrients we call carotenoids. And carotenoids are what give the colors to plants. So when you see that red and the red pepper and the blue and the blueberry, these are powerful phytonutrients that are Mother Nature's anti-inflammatories. And so you want to maximize whole plant foods. You want to minimize animal products and processed foods. There's also a lot of anti-inflammatory spices and things, like you probably heard of turmeric, and those things can really help with that. So yes, you can help with that joint pain by really maximizing anti-inflammatory nutrition, which is a whole food plant-based diet. And by the way, almost any health question you can possibly think of, the answer is almost always going to be a whole food plant-based diet. Heart disease, cancer, inflammation, autoimmune disease, GI health. I mean, you name it, right? Right, Dr. Davis? It's like it's all going to be a plant-based diet. You want to comment?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I think the more that I've been learning about plant-based diets and the more that I've been talking about it, the more that I've seen that it's true that anything that you can come up with, the answer always comes back to eating more plants. It's never about eating more meat or more animal products. Even if you look at the industries that haven't gotten on board completely with 100% whole food plant-based diet, they still aren't saying, well, you really should up your intake of bacon. You know, everybody's still saying, well, you really should eat more vegetables. You should eat more plants. We just are saying that's all you should be eating.
No, that's a great point.
Thank you for those responses. So we're 11:31. So we're going to do questions maybe for another 4 to 5 minutes, and then we're going to go to our great and fun cooking demo with Sharon. So someone's wondering, from Lorena is wondering, can anyone recommend a support group for beginners who are transitioning to a plant-based lifestyle? Well, I sure can. So Salt Lake Thrive, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, we're a local community group. We're affiliated with plantpurecommunities.org, and I put the website in the chat. So Plant Pure Communities, it's a great nonprofit. They support groups like Thrive, which it's really an international grassroots network at this point in time. So I would say go, or you can email me, but go to their website and you can find a pod in your area and find that kind of support group. And there are many, many, like I said, somebody wants to follow with me separately, but there are a lot of support groups for different kinds of folks, like, you know, plant-based for folks over 50 or whatever your particular niche is or what have you. So yes, but going to Plant Pure Communities and finding other groups like Thrive and Salt Lake Thrive. And we, one of our core missions is to provide, not only raise awareness, like we've been doing during this event today, but also providing the resources. So, you know, once people become aware, well, how do I implement that? And the support's really important, because I've seen surveys that one of the reasons why people stop being vegan or plant-based is because of lack of social support. So we have a
Hey, Harriet, can I ask one more question? And I
sure.
can ask this Dr. Davis. There was a question, Lorena says, what about vitamins? So can you answer that? What do you do? What do you recommend patients when they ask about what, if I do a plant-based lifestyle, what about vitamins or supplements? I'd love to hear Dr. Davis's thoughts on that.
Yes. So my thought on that is that the only thing that you don't get with a plant-based diet is B12. And really that's just because of our modern agriculture, the way that we get our food now. B12 is something that's made by bacteria, so it can be found in the soil. It's not something that is made by animals. Now you can get it in animal products because some animals are better at producing B12 because they have the certain bacteria in their guts that can produce it. We just unfortunately are not able to produce B12 in large enough amounts that we need. And so B12 is one of those things that you definitely want to take a supplement for. The requirement is about 5 micrograms a day, which is very little, and your body is extremely efficient in storing it. So if you've been eating, you know, a diet that is high in B12 for your life, you're not going to become deficient in B12 for several years. I mean, they even say like maybe 20, 30 years. But I do recommend that you take a supplement. I take 500 micrograms probably once a week or so, and my whole family takes it. But other than that, I don't recommend any other supplements. Honestly, I think it's a multi-billion-dollar business for expensive urine. And if you do have some sort of a deficiency, then yes, you need to talk to your doctor and look at ways to overcome that deficiency. I mean, you can, and Dr. Olson knows this, if you get into a car accident, you lose a lot of blood, your body needs to restore those red blood cells and it's going to need some extra iron. So you might need to take a supplement for some time. But I don't recommend that just for health purposes to take, for instance, like a vitamin C supplement, because vitamin C, you're going to get it. It's better to take it in the whole form. So eating that orange, because it's packed with a lot of other things. It's not just the vitamin C that's in there, and they all work synergistically together in your body. When you strip that vitamin C away and you just take it as a big chunk in your body doesn't know what to do with it. It's not packaged beautifully the way that it should be when you're eating it. And then with vitamin D too, I know a lot of people take vitamin D. Your body makes vitamin D when your skin is exposed to sunlight. That's the best way to get vitamin D. If you are unable to get vitamin D that way, then you could talk to your doctor about taking a supplement. I wouldn't recommend just taking it just to take it. If you are deficient, then you want to look at that. But again, the best way to get these is in the natural form with sunlight and whole foods.
Just eat plants, right, Dr. Davis?
Please just eat plants.
Plants. So we will do a couple more questions and we'll move on to our cooking demo. Charles must know this is for Dr. Davis. He's wondering the required average sleep is 7 to 9 hours. Is it okay if our sleep gets interrupted by an hour, but then try to make it up for the interrupted loss of 1 hour? So is it possible to, if your sleep is interrupted, is it possible to make that up?
You know, it's tough because your body goes through a lot of stages through sleep, and it depends on when you're woken up. I know for me, sometimes if I'm woken up in the middle of the night, like when I was in residency and my pager would go off, depending on when I woke up, if I went back to sleep, even if I got a total of 8 hours that night, the next day I just didn't feel right. And it's because it was interrupted during that deep sleep time. So it can definitely affect you. I would say that if it happens here and there, it's not that big of a deal. But if that's happening every night, that really can affect your sleep quality. And some of the things that you can do, I mean, you got to figure out what's causing you to wake up in the middle of the night and try to minimize that. But also taking little power naps through the day can help you kind of help make that up. But I know that for me, sometimes that's affected me having to be woken up in the middle of the night.
Thank you, Dr. Davis. And we'll do one more question. We have someone who says they're going back and forth between vegetarian and trying to be plant exclusive, and they're disappointed when they eliminate dairy and eggs. They seem to experience getting acne, especially in the beginning of this transition. And what could possibly be causing that? If you want to start off, Dr. Davis.
Sure. So, I don't think that eliminating dairy and eggs would necessarily contribute to acne. Acne happens a lot with higher fat diets. So it really kind of depends on what is in your diet. So if you're eliminating those things, but you're keeping in maybe some of the oils and the higher fat foods, that's when I've seen people have more problems with acne, with the higher fat foods. So that's something that I would look at, is eliminating eggs and dairy is going to exponentially increase your health. And so getting rid of those, and then on top of that, eliminating the higher fat products, such as the highly processed oils, is what I would recommend for treating acne.
Also, Dr. Davis, have you also seen that as people are transitioning, that the body just does kind of go through a little bit of a roller coaster in a way, just because you're eliminating a lot of toxins and things in your diet, and it's just your GI tract has to get used to this huge amounts of fiber that you've never really had before. So at least when I was transitioning, that was a challenge for me, at least my GI tract, until I was used to that much fiber. And now it's great. So it's those kind of things that I think too, that people do transition, your body transitions, and there are some hiccups in the road as your body's transitioning in that process. Have you seen that with any of your patients?
Absolutely. There's definitely a transition period. So that's part of it, is that you don't know. I mean, some people will even have where maybe their joints are a little bit sore for a little while, but you're retraining your body, you're healing your body, and you are going to kind of feel some of those things as you transition. And that can last for a couple of months. So really, it's really about making this a lifestyle change. It's not a diet. You're making a change, and you need to allow your body that time. I mean, we were talking about the microbiome of your gut. You imagine your body has more bacteria in it than your own cells. It's a huge part of your body. And if you are changing the fundamental bacteria in your body to this whole new group of bacteria, that's going to make some changes in your body overall. And so you're making a big change in your overall body, and that's going to feel different for everybody. So giving it some time and waiting a couple of months, and that usually evens out, and you feel great.
Well, thank you, Dr. Davis and Dr. Olson, for pointing out that this is, a long term. There may be some short-term effects that you see as your body is going through this major transition. But personally, for Salt Lake Thrive, I like to use plant-based lifestyle instead of diet, because to me it is something more holistic and something that is for the long term, and that should be the context for it. So, but thank you so much, everybody, for the great questions, and especially to once again, Dr. Nikki Davis and Dr. Patrick Olson. Hopefully you have their contact information for both Plant-Based Utah and Dr. Nikki Davis. If you need that, if you guys want to go ahead and put that in the chat again, or I can certainly email me at saltlakethrive@gmail.com, and I can put you in touch with them. But thank you so much again, and really appreciate so much information. Like I say, just a great expansive overview of the research on nutrition, of plant-based nutrition, how it affects our health and how it affects our planet. And then also some strategies. Like I said before, I know people are going to be able to leave this meeting with like the six pillars, and some really specific information that people can act on. So thank you so much again. And it was fun. So that was great. I know lots of other folks, everyone enjoyed that as well. So we're going to move on to Sharon Bates. So we're gonna change it up a little bit here. So we're gonna do a fun and free cooking demo. And so Sharon Bates is gonna show us how to do healthy snacks, because we all love to snack. I know I'm a snacker, and even when I'm not hungry. So Sharon is gonna do a great cooking demo to show us how we can snack and enjoy tasty snacks, but it doesn't sabotage our weight goals and our health goals. So thank you so much, Sharon, and we'll turn to you and start learning how to make some healthy snacks.
Thank you, Harriet. I just wanted to point out that Jane Rosenberg had raised her hand for a question. So Jane, if you can type in your question, maybe we can get it answered. And then, okay, so we've learned all the great things about plant-based eating, how great it is for our body, for our planet, for the animals. And it's like, what do we do now? So one thing that I would like to recommend, and let me just add that I am not a nutritionist. I am just, not just, but I am a stay-at-home mom with a 4-year-old and a husband that works in the basement. He's a leadership communicator expert, and he works with people like NASA, astronauts from NASA, and people at Johnson & Johnson, and like all over the world with all these great corporate leaders. And my goal is to keep him healthy. He has heart disease in his family. His dad just had a couple of stents put in, and I am on a mission to keep him alive as long as I can. So, but here's one tip that I would like to share with you. So I have my iPhone, and there's an app called The Daily Dozen by nutritionfacts.org. This is a great, sorry, I'm trying to get no glare. This is a great start to what to get onto your plate daily. It starts with legumes, 3 portions of legumes, and you can click around and look at it. And another thing that it mentions is flaxseed. You'll notice there's no oils on here. Herbs and spices, whole grains, and beverages, and exercise. So up until recently, I have been following this list, but my exercise, I haven't been checking. And it wasn't until Harriet's last event about heart health that I was finally inspired to do a 20-minute power walk every day. And I love it. It feels awesome. So thank you, Harriet. All right. So, and then I wanted to touch on what I take as a plant-based eater, vegan. I know some of you mentioned what's a good B12 supplement I can take. I get this one. It's a lozenge, and I just roll it around on my tongue. It takes about 2 minutes to dissolve. It's delicious, cherry flavored. Excuse me, I didn't mean to make that loud. The vitamin, I take vitamin D3 during the winter. I'm darker. I have Peruvian in me. My mom was Peruvian, my dad is Dutch. And I need to get a lot of vitamin D because of my melanin content. So in the winter here in Utah, the sun doesn't get into the right, angle. It gets out of the vitamin D range. And so this is what I take during the winter, and during the late spring, summer, and early fall, I'm out there every day, just getting my 20 minutes. And another great app is, I'll get to the food in a minute. Another great app is D-Minder. It's this little sun in the black. Yeah, look that up. You can put in what supplements you're taking. It will tell you when the sun is in range in your specific location. It's very helpful. And then I will add that recently I found out that it would be great, if I'm not eating seaweed all the time, to take some kelp granules or some dulce granules. Dulce is a little bit less iodine, but it's an iodine. It's the way that I get my iodine. Or you can just snack on these seaweed snacks. I don't know if you've ever tried these. They have a wasabi flavor, sesame flavor. Yes, I'll show you the B12 again. I see somebody asking. Sorry if it's blurry. Okay, so then we'll start. Now, one of the things I love to do is make a huge batch of beans in my pressure cooker. So if you're going plant-based, oh, let me give you a tour of my kitchen. Here's my kitchen, sink, stove, and this is where I'm giving my presentation. I'm using a big arm holder to hold my camera. Bear with me as I, oh my goodness. Excuse me. And everyone get a pressure cooker. I have an Instapot. I love Instant Pot because it has a stainless steel insert that it's, then it's not non-stick and not leaching any chemicals into the food.
I think one day Sharon should do a cooking class on Instant Pot.
Instant Pot, yeah.
Yeah, one pot Instant Pot meals, because I think the key to one successful key to staying plant-based is to make it easy, just make it super easy.
Yes, and I cook my beans in there, and I cook like, this is for today's presentation, but I always cook 2 sets of beans. Here's another set, and this is just 1 cup of dry beans, and I put them in these glass Tupperware. And yeah, and then it's like ready to go anytime I need it during the week. And then I don't have to use canned products, which also can have a little bit of BPA or non-BPA cans. Who knows what they have, but I just try to keep it as chemical free as possible, as clean as possible. Okay, so we're gonna start off with the crispy chickpeas. I'm gonna do crispy chickpeas. I'm gonna do a homemade granola. And let me just get this slotted spoon. So all you're gonna do to make these crispy chickpeas is to preheat your oven to 400. And then, these are a little, what's the word, like chunky. The water's a little thick, so I think I'm gonna rinse it out to clean them off a little. So I'm gonna do a bunch. These are for snacks, during the day when, by the way, following that Daily 12 app, I usually am not hungry. I actually struggle almost to keep up with my daily dozen. So if you follow it, you're gonna be set. But I have a 4-year-old who loves to snack. So this is what I do. Let me get I think someone is not muted, so the screen is on their profile. I'm gonna just rinse these beans. Okay, you don't even need to dry them. You don't need to put oil on them. They will crisp up just fine. And that's another tip, that if you're cooking anything in like an air fryer or in the oven, I find just spritzing them or like rolling them in some water just does the trick, makes them crispy, just as if there was oil on it. Okay. Okay, so I could do more, but that should be good. And then I'm just gonna put this in the oven for 25 minutes. Okay, then when the timer goes off, you take the chickpeas out. This is my finished batch. You're gonna take the chickpeas out of the oven, leave them on the tray for a second while you get your spices together. And you're gonna put a 1/4 teaspoon of paprika, a 1/4 teaspoon of cumin, ground cumin, 1/8 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. And if you like a little heat, you can put 1/8 of a teaspoon, more or less, of cayenne pepper. And if you want a little salt, you can put about 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Then you're gonna add your maple syrup for a touch of sweetness. So about 1/2 teaspoon should do it. And then what you'll do is you'll drizzle the maple syrup on it, and then you'll toss that around to get them a little sticky. Then you put the spices, and then you'll put them back on the tray and put them in the oven for, you just have the heat off, you turn it off, but you just leave them in the heat. And then they will crisp up with the spices. So that's gonna be the crispy chickpeas. And then we have our homemade granola that we're gonna make. Let's see. Get you set up here. So I like to use stainless steel pans. It works fine with sauteing. This is for the beans. I already sauteed the onion and garlic. It's a 1 onion and about 4 cloves of garlic. I've already sauteed that, but I sauteed in water, just like Chef AJ. That's where I learned it from. No oil needed. Now for the granola, this was such a game changer because I didn't know I can make my own granola. When you go to the store and you buy granola, it's like, you know, it's got like sugar and brown sugar and all kinds of other things that you might not want. So all you have to do to make your granola is heat your pan. And if you're doing grain-free for any reason, you can use just straight out coconut flakes. What I always like, yeah?
Sorry, we had a question. Someone was wondering about the chickpeas. How long do you keep them in the turned off oven?
Until the oven cools off. Just leave them in there. And then when the oven's done cooling, cooling off, they'll be ready and crispy. Yeah. I don't like it when they're a little not crispy. It just bums me out. So that I found that just leaving it in the oven is the secret. Or I'll cook them in my air fryer too. If you have an air fryer, you can do them in the air fryer.
We'll do an air fryer class too in the future.
I know. Actually, Instant Pot has like an addition. You can buy an air fryer that attaches to the top, and I love it. It's great. It was a great Christmas gift I got. So here I've got some rolled oats. And then this is where you get to have fun with it. I usually like to put, like I had mentioned before, coconut flakes. And it's to your liking. I know I'm a measurement freak, like give me the measurements, but this is one of those things that it's like, you just get to play around and feel because you can't go wrong. So then I like to do some pumpkin seeds. So the flame is on, I would say medium. Don't want to burn it. It's like you're basically toasting it in a pan. Some people do it in an oven, but this for me seems much more hands-on and fun. Okay. So you just keep moving it around. So you could put flaxseed, but normally what I like to do is I found out that because flaxseed has such a hard shell, it's better to grind it. So I grind it in a coffee grinder and I just keep some on hand and I keep it refrigerated. It's good, I hear, for about 4 or 5 days. That's, I would say, the max of it holding its maximum nutritional value. And then it starts to maybe slowly deplete from there. But that's what I found was the best way to keep my flaxseed. And I use it often enough. I'm always throwing it in smoothies because of my daily dozen. Okay, so I put in kind of the bigger things, and now I'm going to start to work my way into some smaller things. I thought maybe sesame needed to be treated the same way as flaxseed, but when I chew on them, they do have a different texture. You can definitely tell that flaxseed has a little bit of a harder shell. Sesame seed, it adds such a nice flavor. It's kind of interesting, but I don't know if you remember when I was, of course you don't remember when I was little, but when I was young, I used to go to the store and I could buy these candies that were just, I think, sesame seed and honey or something, and they were in these little rectangles. You're gonna start to hear popping here, by the way. But you can see the coconut getting kind of this like brown toasty texture. And the popping is the pumpkin seed. But yeah, I used to get these candies and then I remembered that it has this really great flavor with sweet. I'm gonna turn down the flame a little because it seems like it's cooking a little fast. So it goes really well in the granola. And then let's see, I think that's as far as I'll go. I don't add any raisins or anything. The spices that I like to add, my go-to for the granola, let me just flip this, is cinnamon. I put about a 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon. I'm running low on my soup. Gotta refill these. And then I have this bottle of vanilla extract, but I don't use, we've already used the extract in there. In fact, now I just use vanilla beans and I blend them with 2 vanilla beans whole, blend it with 1/2 cup of water. And this is also an AJ Chef AJ trick. It's vanilla extract without the alcohol. So I put about half a teaspoon in, and that's it. You've got your granola, and if you want to make it chunky and sticky, you get your maple syrup, and you drizzle it on. Actually, I think I'll wait till it cools off a little because the pan's pretty hot. But you still want to drizzle it on when it's warm. So there's your granola. Kind of trying to move fast to keep good time here. There we go. Okay, so now I'm going to start on this wonderful bean dip. So the granola comes in handy for, you can just snack. My son just loves to just dig into it with a spoon. You can top like an acai bowl with it, or you can put it on like a plant-based yogurt if you want to. I like to buy this Lava brand of yogurt. Let's see, you can also use it on your apple nachos, which we'll be doing in just a minute. And then we're gonna move into the bean dip, and that, so what I have here is 1 whole onion, 4 cloves of garlic, and the garlic's just, it's not minced, it's chopped. It's going to be blended pretty much anyway, so you can just throw it in there chopped roughly. And then about 4 green onions, 3 or 4 green onions, like the scallion green onions. Then we're gonna do 1 cup of, let's see what, use the slotted spoon. We're gonna do 1 cup of a white bean. I have navy beans. Toss that in there. And 1 cup of a red bean. These are red kidney. I would say 1 cup of dry beans soaked overnight ends up turning into about 2 cans of beans. So like 3 cups of beans. And so I'll use these beans on another day, and another dish, on another night. If sometimes I only do 1 bean in the week, I'll do 1 kind of bean. And then I'll do lentils. In fact, on St. Patrick's Day, I did corned beef hash with lentils and potatoes, and it was amazing. It was so delicious. I wasn't even a fan of corned beef hash, and this recipe was so good. It was one of those, like, you know how Vegenaise from Follow Your Heart is like better than real mayonnaise. This was like better than real hash. Maybe this should be the real hash. Okay, so you got your beans. Now this is interesting because it's such a great flavor to throw in for maybe when you do a plant-based mac and cheese or something like that. Mustard will be in the cheese recipe. I'm using Grey Poupon because I'm trying to finish it. I don't think it's organic. I usually try to use organic. Okay, so you'll need 1 teaspoon of mustard. And we're gonna send you guys the recipes via email. So you'll get all the recipes for all of this. And miso, which has, oh my goodness, let me show you this. This miso, I think they all come with this. This is the Miso Master brand. The 10 scientifically researched benefits to miso. I mean, like crazy benefits. I love it. Benefits your digestive system, benefits even protects you from radiation due to dipolocalonic acid and alkaloid that chelates heavy metals and discharges them from the body. It's amazing. So you're going to do 2 tablespoons of miso. This is giving it that.
I'm glad this recipe has miso, Sharon. I love miso. I always put it in. And so these days we're fortunate, most larger metropolitan or even medium-sized metropolitan areas, miso is pretty much commonly available in most major grocery chains now. So easy to find, fortunately.
Thank goodness. Any soy products I try to get organic, of course, because it is one of the like dirty dozen, high pesticides, all that. Dirty dozen, not daily dozen. Oh, and I also, just while this is mellowing out, I kind of want it to cool off before I throw it in the blender. But soy curls, those of you asking for alternative, like, oh, is meat, you know, are the meat imitation meats okay? This is let's see if I can show the texture. Oh, there we go. These are called soy curls, and guess what? It's 1 ingredient. One ingredient, whole non-GMO soybeans. You soak this for 10 minutes in water, and it gives you all kinds of textures. But the #1 texture that I go for with it is like chicken strips, but it has that wonderful gummy flavor. Soy curls. I think, Harriet, you turned me on to these, and I'm such a fan. I've done like beef broccoli dish, you know, no beef, but with soy curls with a certain seasoning. It's delicious.
Soy curls, we were talking about plant-based meats, processed meats before, and yes, so like soy curls, they're helpful. They're 1 ingredient, and they just have so many uses. We use them in pot pie, tacos, what have you. So yes, I highly recommend the soy curls.
Yeah. The miso is going to give this dish that umami flavor. Mushrooms give an umami flavor. Miso gives an umami flavor. There are like a couple other things, I think, but that's what really gives this dish an amazing like pizzazz. All right, and then after that is the parsley. So a good tip is always have herbs, just always. I go shopping once a week, and I always stock up on parsley and cilantro, even if I don't use it, which is hardly ever, but I always have it. It just always adds such a great addition to a dish. So you're gonna want a 1/2 cup, not packed. Curly parsley, by the way, does really well here in this climate. It lives through the winter. You can grow it. If you are ever want to grow your own vegetables, I highly recommend growyourownvegetables.org. It's so well done. It's so like grow your own vegetables for dummies. And I had such a successful garden last year, and I'm so excited for this year. I've already got peanuts going. I've got my potatoes ready to get planted. I should show you my potato drawer. Let me show you. It's 12:10. This is my potato drawer. And I'm like looking at all of these like potential, you know, babies. I had such a successful potato harvest last year. You just plant it, leave it alone. Chop it up. Okay, so you don't actually need to chop it up that much because you're going to blend it. Okay. And now, I don't like putting anything hot, super hot in my blender. And so normally I'd let this cool off, but it's not so hot. Okay, so, and the reason is for that, again, I'm just like, I'm such a stickler for like, you know, heating up plastics with my food and things like that. Because they will leach. I'll do it quickly. And Harriet, I'm going to put myself on mute because you know that it's loud. So feel free to talk about our next event.
Yeah, so thank you, Sharon, for reminding about our next event. So the one that we're still working on the exact date, but we're partnering with Plant-Based Pittsburgh, which is a great plant-based support group in Pittsburgh. The group leader, Sally Lipsky. So we're so happy we're going to be hosting Dean and Aisha Sherzai. I don't know how many of you are familiar with them, but they're a neurologist, and they have just done deep, extensive research into how lifestyle factors can impact our susceptibility to Alzheimer's and dementia. And they have a Facebook page, what have you. So they have a book out, gosh, I think it came out 2017, 2018, The Alzheimer's Solution, and which is a really fantastic book. And they don't claim that healthy lifestyle factors, and many of which Dr. Davis talked to earlier, can reverse Alzheimer's, but certainly how it healthy plant-based nutrition and other healthy lifestyle factors like stress management, sleep, social connections, and an engaged mind can help prevent, my goodness, up to 80 or 90% cases of Alzheimer's. So they have a new book coming out. And so to help celebrate that, we'll be hosting them in an event in May. So probably sometime in May. So please, I'll put our Facebook page in the chat, but facebook.com, Salt Lake Thrive. But yes, so we're going to be very excited to be hosting their Sherzais in May. So please look for that event. And I have everyone's email who signed up through Eventbrite. And so we'll send out the notice once we have the particulars, the date and the time. We'll let everybody know about that. So we're very excited to have that coming up.
Yay. Okay, so I've blended this. I've actually pulsed it. I like it a little chunky, so it's not pureed into like a hummus. And you can still see the specks of parsley. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that in my Tupperware, because what you want to do is actually let this sit for maybe 20 minutes and the flavors will just blend together so nicely. And this is, I'm imagining, you know, this is what I would do on a Sunday, like tomorrow, and just have it available for the week. And then I have yet to make a truly amazing cracker recipe. So what I do is I buy these Mary's Gone crackers, which are brown rice based, and they're awesome. This is the jalapeno flavor. So I would eat this dip with these crackers. And I want to mention, like, look at these lentil crackers. I got these Saffron Road. Watch out, read the ingredients, because I bought this and then it's like, oh, duh, it contains milk. So this has kind of gone in the back of the cabinet. I probably should just, like, I don't know, take it downtown, give it to a homeless person. I don't know. So there you have the bean dip. Now for the apple nachos, which take 2 seconds. Not really, but okay.
I think everyone's getting hungry, Sharon.
I know. So, I wish I could just, like, here you go, everybody, sample, transport. There
Maybe
go the beans.
Future
There's-
Zoom feature.
Okay, I have this great slicer. Those are the garbanzo beans. Those are ready. So what I would do, like I said, take them out, turn off the heat, take them out, toss them into the spices, and then just put them back in the oven without any additional temperature, any additional heat. Okay, so this is your apple nachos. Slice them up, put them on your plate. Okay, so I make my own peanut butter with my blender. Super easy. With the Blendtec, you just put a bag of peanuts and, you know, shelled, of course, and then hit the soup function, and you'll get this beautiful creamy peanut butter. You probably can't see it, but you'll see it when I put it on the apples. On the Daily Dozen app, the recommended amount of nuts is, I think, 2 to 3 tablespoons. So this would cover that, about that.
Sharon, one tip I think I got from Dr. Greger is this, because I love peanut butter, but it has a lot of calories. So if you put it on top of apples, just like you're doing, and it helps because of the fiber in the apples, your body, and the doctor was going to correct me if I'm wrong, your body actually ends up absorbing less of the fat or fewer of the calories from the peanut butter.
Oh, that sounds lovely. Okay, that's good to know. Yeah, you know what's funny is if we do go out for like a treat or an ice cream or something, I will normally have my son eat like a piece of fruit before, because I've heard something similar to that. And I was thinking, you know, oh, well, if it can do that, then maybe it will also like lower the impact of the sugar that is hitting his system. Now, everybody, I think, is a fan of celery with peanut butter. And this is, I don't always do this, but every once in a while I get a little craving to put that on there. And then I have a great seed mix. It's got hemp seeds, flax seeds, pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, and I'll sprinkle this on there. Or we can do the granola with that vanilla flavor. And there are your apple nachos.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sharon. And like I say, I'm getting hungrier by the minute. Actually, I did sneak away made a couple of homemade oatmeal cookies because I could feel my stomach rumbling while watching Sharon cook her delicious snacks. So do we have any questions for Sharon before we move on to Marty Nightingale and learn about how to help reduce our stress in these stressful times and mindful meditation? Any questions for Sharon? And we will include the recipes. There will be a follow-up email. Please allow us a few days to get the email out. May not be tomorrow, later today, maybe a few days later, later in the week, but we will send out the recipes and the follow-up email. Oh, how do you feel about microwaves, Sharon?
I use them in emergencies, but I'll normally heat up my food in a pan or in the oven.
Okay.
I will also add, we mentioned peanuts and raisins as a snack. I think we can figure out, just put some peanuts and some raisins together. It tastes like a peanut butter jelly sandwich. It's really good.
Well, one thing I really loved about your cooking demo, Sharon, is, is quick and easy, because I'm innately a very lazy person. So if I can't do something about 5 minutes, it's just not going to happen. And all the ingredients are commonly available and inexpensive. In the miso, like I say, it's more maybe 5 years ago. It's like, where can I get miso? Although you can get anything on Amazon or otherwise, but most grocery stores now carry miso. So it's pretty easy to find. So anyway, Sharon, and like we have, I'll also share our YouTube channel. Sharon, this is her third or fourth cooking demo for us. They're always a lot of fun. And the goal is, like I say, just help people successfully go in their plant-based transition and plant-based journey. And we will be doing others in the future. So please visit our Facebook page, and we post our events there. So anyway,
Somebody was asking about, sorry.
Oh,
Somebody
go
was
ahead, and then we'll move
asking about the tripod. This is the arm that I use to hold my iPad so you guys can see the food that I was making. And this is my presentation table.
And I'm also with you, Sharon, on the Mary's crackers. I love my Mary's crackers. So 100% based, I think pretty much oil-free. All right. Well, thank you, Sharon.
They are oil-free, yes. And you can get a huge box at Costco.
Oh, thank you.
I did not know that. All right, we'll have to have a Mary's cracker meetup. That probably brings a different flavor of Mary's crackers. All right, thank you, Sharon. So
you're welcome. Love
bye.
You guys.
We'll see you next cooking demo. Thank you so much. So now we're going to move on to Marty Nightingale. So as mentioned before, just everyday life, I think, as Dr. Davis was talking about earlier, it can be very stressful, and certainly with the pandemic, when just so much been going on. And so I think we're learning more and more how our mental health really impacts. I think Dr. Davis and Dr. Olson spoke to this. Our mental health, such as stress and depression, really impacts our body as a system. So it really impacts our overall health and well-being. So we're going to turn to Marty Nightingale. She's a registered yoga instructor, as well as being a super midwife here in Salt Lake, and she has been vegan for many years. And Marty can correct me. I think she raised 2 sons vegan, or mostly vegan. So we're going to learn about mindful meditation and stress reduction with Marty Nightingale. Marty, are you with us?
Yes, I'm right here.
Yay! Welcome, Marty. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, let me get my screen up here.
So did I get that right, Marty? You raised your sons mostly vegan, or all vegan, or somewhat plant-based, or?
Yeah, so both my kids were raised vegan. Yeah, so let me get this going here. Can you guys see that?
No, I still see your.
Okay, let's see.
Okay, there we go.
Is that it?
There you go.
Awesome.
That's
great.
it.
All right, so just to tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Marty Nightingale. I'm a certified nurse midwife. I have a doctorate in nursing practice. So I'm a nurse practitioner. I get to deliver babies. I'm a 200-hour registered yoga teacher. I've been vegan for 30 years. And yes, I've raised 2 boys vegan. and I've had 2 vegan pregnancies myself. I'm also a plant-based endurance athlete. I have specialty training in treating perinatal mental health disorders. And this year I'll get my certification in lifestyle medicine like Nikki. And then I have been meditating for over 25 years. I did my first Zen retreat over 25 years ago. And so that's why I am able to talk to you at least a little bit about yoga and mindfulness and meditation. So that's what I'm going to share with you guys today. Oop. Sorry about that. Let me, gosh. Start over here, sorry. Okay, I'm gonna dive in straight away with the gratefulness meditation that I share with patients. This one is really good when we're in a pandemic or when you're having a really hard time, maybe with anxiety or just seeing the beauty in your life and things like that. Gratefulness practices have been shown to really help with improving mood and improving happiness factors in people's lives. My patients often will use it at the beginning of their day or at the end of their day. And so what I'm going to have you guys do is go ahead and join me for this 5-minute meditation. And I'm going to start a timer and I'm going to guide us. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is just get into a comfortable position. You could be seated or lying. And I want you to have your eyes gently closed. And this is going to take about 30 seconds just to find your comfortable position. Next, you're going to start bringing some awareness to your breath. You don't need to change your breath right at first. But after you bring some awareness to your breath, I want you to start deepening your inhalation and then deepening your exhalation, bringing that exhale to empty. Next, you're going to bring to mind one positive thing about your day or your life. And you're going to focus on this thing for 1 minute and really try to let those positive thoughts really wash over you and focus on them while you're continuing that deep breathing. Next, you're going to bring to mind one positive thing about a person you care for or someone in your life. And again, really let that positive quality about that person come to mind and continue to do your deep breathing over this minute. And then next, we're going to bring to mind one positive thing about ourselves. This can be a little difficult, but we all can think of one positive thing about ourselves. And again, really try to think about that positive quality and let those positive feelings come. And then continue your deep breathing over this next minute as we think about this quality. And then last, we're going to think about each of the 3 qualities over the last minute as we continue our deep breathing, and just let those positive feelings wash over you. And then we can close with a nice final deep breath. Okay, so hopefully that was a nice introduction to just an easy 5-minute gratefulness meditation that you can bring with you and try it out this upcoming week. Sorry, I'm having trouble getting my slides to move with. Okay, there we go. All right, so talking about stress today, as we know, mild stress can have positive effects. It can motivate us to get a lecture completed, get us to work on time, things like that. But in excess, an overabundance of stress can cause excess stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. And those can have negative impacts on us. Chronic exposure can lead to overeating, obesity, anxiety, depression, drug and alcohol misuse, high blood pressure, strokes, and heart attacks. And as you can see with this little photo, the negative effects of stress really affect our entire body. Stress statistics, and of course they've worsened over this last year. These are pre-pandemic statistics. A lot of us have seen the statistics from this year, rocketing suicides and things like that. I know I've seen a ton of patients in my office for depression and anxiety this year. 77% of patients, of people say that stress affects their physical health. 73% say that it impacts their mental health. 48% say it affects their sleep. 48% say it affects their personal and professional life. 54% say it causes them to fight with people who are close to them. 48% say that it has increased over the past 5 years. So with stress affecting our physical health, our mental health, affecting our sleep, our personal and professional life, and then also affecting our close relationships, obviously it is a problem for most of us. So what are we going to do about it? What can you do on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis? So what I propose is mindfulness practices. What is mindfulness? So some of the leaders give us some definitions here. Mindfulness Utah says it's moment-to-moment, non-judgmental awareness. Mindfulness offers us a lens through which to experience our lives in a more present, alert, and gentle way. It's a way of life that cultivates our capacity for sharpening the mind and opening the heart. John Kabat-Zinn, who is a forefather of mindfulness, calls it being fully awake in our lives, perceiving the exquisite vividness of each moment. The UCLA Mindfulness Awareness Research Center says it's paying attention to the present moment experience with open curiosity and willingness to be with what is. So the mindfulness practices I'm just going to go over with you today is just basic mindfulness, meditation, and yoga. So mindfulness, I like to call this just an awareness to the present. So benefits of mindfulness, being more present in your day, increasing connection to people in our lives, decreasing stress, and decreasing just mindless errors. A lot of us just plow through our day, going from one activity to the next, and don't really take a pause to think about what we're doing, paying attention to what we're doing. We're thinking about what we just got through doing, or we're planning what our next thing is going to be, and we're not really present with what we're doing. So some of the mindfulness practices that we can incorporate in our day-to-day life, or our moment-to-moment life, are these practices. So being more mindful in our common activities. So bringing mindfulness to things that we're doing throughout our day, like brushing our teeth, washing dishes, while we're eating, telling people hello and goodbye. So one way that we can do that is just next time you're doing one of these activities, try to be present while you're doing it. Try not to think about what you just got through doing, and try not to think about your to-do list. Start to notice the sensations of what you're doing. So if you're brushing your teeth, try to just brush your teeth. Don't think about what are the 6 things you need to do next. Notice the taste of the toothpaste. Notice the vibration of the toothbrush. Notice what it smells like. Notice the sensation, and just be present while you're brushing your teeth. Or next time you're telling your kids goodbye and they're leaving for school, try not to do 6 other things at that time. And when you hug them goodbye, just experience the hug in its entirety. And so I just invite you to just maybe pick one activity this upcoming week that you're going to be mindful while you're doing it, and just see what that feels like for you. Another mindfulness practices that a lot of companies are starting to adopt is what I call a 3 breaths practice. You can just do 1 breath if you'd like, but we're starting to do it at the hospital. They're encouraging us when we put our hand sanitizer on before we enter a patient's room to do this. They're starting to do it in the OR before they begin a surgery. And they're doing it before meetings, things like this. So it's just a moment to take a pause and take a breath. A lot of places are taking a pause and doing 3 breaths. And so it's an opportunity between transitions in your day, or before a difficult meeting or a difficult situation. So I often do it between transitions in my day. So when I'm moving in my day between maybe seeing patients all morning, and then I'm moving into going in the lunchroom to be with my staff, I'll take a pause right there. So I'm not bringing the stress of the day into that lunchroom. Before each patient, I take a pause so that I'm being mindful when I'm entering that patient's room and being fully present with that patient. So that's just a nice opportunity. Another opportunity, and it's something that I do, is I set a mindfulness bell. And so I have it set on my phone. I have mine set at a random time, so it rings randomly. You can set them exactly on the hour, but it rings and it reminds me to take a deep breath and be mindful with what I'm doing. And so sometimes I'm literally seeing a patient and my bell rings, and I just tell the patient That's my mindfulness bell. It's my reminder to take a deep breath, and I will stop and take a deep breath, and the patient will take a deep breath with me. And so it rings throughout the day. And a lot of times I'm in my office with 3 other midwives, and it rings and we all take a deep breath. And so it's just another opportunity to be mindful in your day. Here are some mindfulness resources. There's the mindfulness bell that I use. There are so many resources today on mindfulness. There's books on, mindfulness for beginners, mindfulness in parenting, definitely lots of books on mindful eating. So there's a ton of resources out there, but these are just some that I am familiar with. Next, we're going to talk about meditation. I like to describe meditation as finding stillness. I don't think a lot of us are comfortable with quiet and stillness. We are very, very busy people in America, and most of us are busy from when we wake up in the morning until we lay our heads down at night. And we're very productive people. However, there is a lot to be found in stillness. Physical benefits of meditation. Now these research findings were all based on MBSR. It's mindfulness-based stress reduction, and that is a meditation and mindfulness program, which I'll talk a bit more about later. Coronary artery disease. This is our biggest killer, as we've learned today. When added to a cardiac rehab program, meditation or MBSR reduced mortality by 41% in the first 2 years following an event, and by 46% for recurrence. It decreased morbidity, it decreased psychological distress and biological risk factors, including plasma lipids, weight and blood pressure and blood glucose, which is phenomenal. So can you imagine combining plant-based diet and meditation? Hypertension, it decreases blood pressure in amounts comparable to medication and other lifestyle modifications like weight loss, sodium restriction, and increased aerobic exercise. So again, can you imagine a plant-based diet with meditation? That's why this is so encouraged by people in healthcare. Cancer, it improved survival rates in melanoma and metastatic breast cancer, and improved mood and psychological distress. Chronic pain, reduced pain, improved activity, mood and self-esteem, and reduced use of pain medications. Type 1 diabetes significantly lowered glucose levels in poorly controlled patients. Anxiety and depression reduces symptoms of anxiety, psychological distress, and secondary depression, and significantly reduces recurrences of major depressive episodes. And then also improves fibromyalgia, multiple sclerosis, psoriasis, IBS, asthma, and respiratory disorders, and headache. Brain benefits of meditation. So of course, as brain benefits, we expect those because we're relaxing our brain, right? We're quieting our mind, but definitely there's lots of brain benefits. And people always kind of wonder, like, well, how much meditation do I need to do? Do I need to do like 40 minutes a day? And then how long do I have to do it? But you really don't need to. 10 minutes a day for 14 days, and they're already starting to see brain changes, which is just remarkable. There's neuroprotective qualities of meditation. It prevents gray matter depletion, and gray matter is constantly being depleted as we age, but they found that it's not being depleted quite so much with meditators. In an eight-week Harvard study, they found with novice meditators, so that's beginning meditators, that 15,061 genes were affected, and they concluded in their study that aging is slowed with meditation. It improves attention. So when you're meditating, the prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for attention, is being stimulated, and that helps with attention. It also increases happiness. So the other part of the brain that's stimulated is a left prefrontal cortex, and that's your happiness center. And so over time, what they found when they looked at MRIs of Buddhist monks, they found that these monks had a baseline happiness level that was just extraordinarily high, and they found that they had their left side, that prefrontal cortex, those connections were just very, very developed. And so what they found is that over time, these connections were much more developed, and your happiness baseline is improved. Types of meditation. There are a ton of different types, and a lot of times when you go into a practice, you might use a variety of those types together. Okay, so I'm just going to very briefly cover these things, but mindfulness meditation or insight, you're noticing your thoughts, like, oh, thinking about the rain outside, thinking about doing a lecture, and you just let those thoughts pass. Focus meditation, you would either focus on the breath, like notice inhaling, exhaling, or counting the breath, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or using mala beads where you're holding those beads in your hand. Movement meditation, so you can do a walking meditation, or you can do yoga, which is a type of meditation. Mantra, you can recite a mantra, like feeling happy thoughts or whatever you want to focus on. Progressive relaxation is really great. You can do a body scan. Those are very, very helpful at 3 a.m. after you deliver a baby and you really need to go to sleep, or you come home and you're really tired and your body's exhausted and you feel like you need to sleep, but you can't settle down. Loving kindness meditation. You send out loving kindness to other people or the world or yourself. Tonglen meditation, kind of the opposite. You take on the pain or the worries of other people or the world. That's a very advanced technique. Visualization or guided meditation, that type of meditation is really great for athletes, like visualizing throwing the disc or jumping over the thing or whatever. Or a guided meditation is good if you're having a lot of stress or anxiety and you can't just sit still and you need to have that guidance of the progression of the meditation. And then MBSR is a mindfulness-based stress reduction. It is an entire 8-week program that you can go through that was introduced by Jon Kabat-Zinn into hospitals in the 70s, and lots of research on that technique. There is no right type, and whatever works best for you at that time and on that day is the best kind. And you really don't have to do 40 minutes a day or whatever else. And so I'm a fan of doing what works for you and whatever's best. Here's some resources. As I said, Jon Kabat-Zinn is the forefather of meditation and mindfulness as far as introducing it into hospital systems. And he has an 8-week program, and I put that link there. And then Paulo's Mindfulness is a great resource for a free MBSR online course. Plum Village is a vegan Zen monastery in France started by Thich Nhat Hanh, and that link has so many great resources for mindfulness bell and a variety of meditations and lectures and things. And they do have a body scan meditation for at night or when you need to relax your body that I recommend to patients. Some local resources. We do have a lovely meditation center or Zen meditation center here called 2 Arrows Zen. And they have daily meditations, which are somewhat on hold because of COVID, but they do have a Sunday introduction to meditation that you can link onto, and they have a wonderful center that hopefully soon you can go back and actually meditate. They have Zen retreats, all that stuff, if that's your jam. And then Mindfulness Utah, which is more MBSR focused, has some great resources there. They have classes and retreats and stuff as well. And then moving on to yoga, I define that as moving meditation. And just a little, very, very brief overview of yoga, because I just feel like yoga is so huge, I can't possibly cover it in this short time today. But yoga is truly a meditation practice in physical form. Yoga, the word yoga is from yoke, and it means to bind. It's connecting your body and your breath. And a lot of people kind of know there's this weird connection with like yoga, and there's a lot of vegans that, or a lot of yogis are vegan or vegetarian. And the reason why is yoga is guided by the Yoga Sutras, and there's two branches of that, the niyamas and the yamas. And the very first of the yamas is ahimsa. And that teaching is the teaching of nonviolence, and that includes physical nonviolence as well as nonviolence of words and thoughts. And so that is where that kind of deep-rooted link in yoga and being nonviolent and kind of following that vegan path comes from. And the Yoga Sutras is why yoga is really a more spiritual practice and a meditation practice. It's not just an athletic practice where some people might think it is. There are a variety of types and schools of yoga, and each has a different focus, and each of those focus gives you different benefits within your mind, body, and so depending on kind of where you want to focus would kind of lead you on to which type of yoga you want to do. I'm a fan of trying out the different types and seeing what feels good to you. And again, they each have a different style and focus, but I'm not going to cover this today because they're very complicated to cover. Benefits of yoga. Yoga reduces stress and physical pain. It improves mood and energy. It increases relaxation and improves sleep. It improves flexibility, balance, and strength. It improves arthritis and back pain. It improves quality of life during illness, including cancer, rheumatoid arthritis, ulcerative colitis, and stroke. And again, here we go back to our heart health. It improves cardiovascular health and lowers cardiovascular risk factors like blood pressure, BMI, and cholesterol. There is a ton of research on yoga and heart health. I could not possibly cover it in this lecture, but it is very, very good for heart health. And then here's very brief yoga resources. There is an awesome podcast called Yoga is Vegan. And within that podcast, there is a ton of resources. So I encourage you to check it out. Right now, there's a ton of online and Zoom resources for yoga because a lot of it has moved online. Of course, there's studio options as people are comfortable with that. But a lot of these online and Zoom resources have 14 to 60-day trials. So you could try out all the different types of yoga and see which ones you like. There is a online resource that has a ton of classes, and that's Yoga with Adrienne. And she has over 500 free yoga classes, and I think that's just awesome. And then Palu's Mindfulness, which I introduced you to a moment back, also does have a couple of yoga classes on there, and those are more like MBSR, and those are really more mindful type of yoga practices. And I am done, and I have like 1 minute or so for questions. And then here is my contact information. So if anybody wants to shoot me an email or anything like that, this is where I see patients, and these are the services I provide, just so you guys have an idea. And yeah, any interesting questions?
So thanks so much, Marley. We do have one question so far on the chat, but I was looking forward to all the sessions during today's event, but particularly this one, because I self-identify as a super stressor. We had a quick coordination meeting with the speakers before this event began, and I was sharing how I'm a worrier. I've always been envious of friends who seem to be relaxed and have kind of a que sera, sera attitude. Well, I'm a major worrier, and I'm sure like other people, I felt stressed. I can feel it. I can feel it in my body. I can feel my heart. I can feel it in my breath. So this is, this information, and along with the resources and the tips that Marty provided, I know will be very helpful to me. So I really appreciate that. So Marty, we do have one question from Kathy, and she's wondering about, could any of this, like the mindful meditation or what have you, relaxing techniques, could that help with major teeth grinding? Could that in any way, have you come across any data about that or had an experience with that?
I mean, I don't know specifically. I mean, I think that it depends like what your cause is for that. You know what I mean? But I certainly think, like, I will say, like, it can't hurt to try, right? I mean, and I do feel like a lot of these practices, there's a quick turnaround time. Like within a week, a lot of times you're already noticing benefit. Like if I go traveling or I do something like that and I miss my meditation or yoga or anything like that, even like after 3 days, I'm already like, what is wrong with me? I'm already noticing. And so that's why I feel like stress and anxiety, it's like a little suitcase you carry with you. That's what I tell my patients. And it's like, if you just carry it around with you every single day and you go to sleep at night and you have that little suitcase with you and you never unpack it, I mean, it just piles up and it just it's like that suitcase you stuffed at the end of your vacation. You're trying to close it. You're like, well, it didn't fit like it did at the beginning of the vacation. I mean, that's what happens. And so that's why I feel like if you do like a gratefulness meditation or that body scan at night or something, it's like just unpacking that stress from that day, because tomorrow you're getting all that stress again for the next day piled back in the suitcase. We're not getting rid of our stress. I mean, like sometimes my patients, they come in to see me, they just had a baby, they have some toddlers, they're breastfeeding, they can't get rid of their kids. They're waking up all night with their breastfeeding baby. You can't get rid of your kids. You can't quit your job. We can't just get rid of it. So we have to figure out how to deal with it, right? And so that's the thing is, you can't pull all your teeth out. But what you could do with the grinding is try the meditation. I would do a body scan at night just to make sure you've unpacked the stress from the day and focus on relaxing that part of my body in the shoulders, and then see how you do. I would do it for 2 weeks every single night and see if you notice a difference.
Thanks, Marlene. And one, I think something you said earlier, which I liked, is like it could be 5 or 10 minutes a day. People need to think, oh, I need to set aside a half an hour, which could be more stressful because people think I don't have that much time. So it's something just a few minutes every day, and you can start this healing process. We have another question. Any tips for finding yoga classes for larger bodies?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I can't, you know what? If you send me an email, right here where my email name is, I can find the name of a couple of people and send it to you specifically. But you could also just literally Google yoga for larger bodies. There are 2 or 3 yoga instructors who specifically will do online classes, yoga for larger bodies. That there is a whole group of yoga instructors that focus on that are very inclusive, and that will make you feel very welcomed and included. And so I think that's that's a great question. So, but I can give you specific instructors, but you could literally Google yoga for larger bodies, and I think that those resources will pop up for you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Marley. That was great information with some tips, as long as also with resources. And maybe, like you said, yoga is such a huge topic. So maybe, we'll do a future event. We'll have you come back and we'll really give that the time it needs. And we'll do a deeper dive into yoga and really the holistic approach between nutrition, mind, body, and soul, and food. So thank you so much, Marty. And you've got your information, your contact information there. So, and last but not certainly least, so we're going to go from mental health and mindful meditation, what have you, so mental health and cognitive health. And we're going to move to Matt Stedman, who's an expert fitness coach. And Matt's been vegan for over 25 years. So Matt's going to talk about, now that we've talked about nutrition, we've talked about mental health, Now we're going to talk about our physical health and how we get our bodies into shape. So Matt, are you here, Matt?
I am here.
Wonderful. There's Matt. Well, thank you so much. So once again, Matt, I'm so excited to meet Matt. I haven't had the opportunity to meet him before, but got connected to him through this event. And I know we're always looking for, I know I am, someone who really can give some, there's just so much conflicting information out there about how to get fit, the best exercises, what have you. So it's great to have an expert plant-based fitness coach here who's going to help us walk through that and give us some tips that we can use. So thank you so much, Matt. So we'll turn it over to you and share your presentation.
Awesome. Well, I'll just introduce myself. I'm Matt Stedman. I've been doing this for 10 or 11 years. I started out my professional career actually as a union pipe fitter. And then 2008 rolled around and 60% of our workforce got laid off. And so I went back to school and went back to school for exercise science and then got into this. I fought professionally in MMA. I still compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a few times a year. I also compete in strength events, kettlebell lifting events, such as that. And I train a myriad of different athletes, weekend warriors, people rehabbing from injuries, all sorts, all over the spectrum. So today I'm just going to go over some basic strength training principles and then talk about strategies about how to eat before and after your workout, and if needed, then and during your workout. So here we go. Get oh, there we go. Wait, it's not letting me share.
We got you on earlier.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here.
So I see your phone. It says you're sharing screen.
Yeah. I don't know why it's not. There we go. Wait, screen, start broadcast.
Things that work during practice.
Okay, here we go.
Great.
Sorry, that was my daughter.
Oh,
Okay, basic
Hey,
strength
for-
concepts and plant-based fitness nutrition. So we're just going to dive into some basic strength concepts, the principles of strength training, and how to build your own training program, really. It goes a little bit deeper than what we're going to go today, but I'll cover the basics. The strength principles. The first one is specificity. The second one is overload. We got fatigue management, stimulus recovery, adaptation, variation, phase potentiation, and last, individual differences. So I'll go over what each principle means and kind of what the point of each one is. So we have specificity. This is the principle that creates a blueprint for the decisions made to build a program. Example, if you're powerlifting or Olympic lifting or triathlon training, or just doing general physical preparedness, you're going to want to use exercises that are going to help you succeed at those endeavors. So using movements that directly enhance the ability in the sport or endeavor that you've chosen is probably the best way to go. All right, next one is overload. This one can be a little confusing for some people, but it's the principle that states your training must be stimulating and increased stimulation over time to elicit adaptation. Essentially, your training must become harder over time. So say you start at a weight and you get used to it and it gets easier and easier. Well, you want to add some weight over time to to elicit adaptations. Okay, so that's or some people will call it progressive overload. That's a pretty important concept in strength training, and not only strength training, but endurance training, power training, whatever you're doing. So, all right, the next one is fatigue management. The strategic planning of rest days, light days, deload weeks, finding a person that finding a way to maximize your recovery, your personal maximal recoverable volume, which is going to be different for everybody. Some people can do lots of volume. Some people can't do quite as much volume. You have to find your own. Sometimes you have a good coach that helps you do that. So that's fatigue management. You have to, sometimes those light days, deload weeks are just more important than your more intense days, your more intense weeks. You really have to plan that out. And another factors are like, as we age, you got to use a little bit more recovery, stuff like that. The next one is stimulus recovery adaptation. Okay, so the organization of training for your body to experience the appropriate stimulus while allowing for your body to recover and adapt. So this just means not going beyond what you're capable of and finding what you're capable of and being able to recover from that, to recover from that. That could be recovering your heart rate, making sure you're clearing that lactic acid. All sorts of different factors come into that, but you don't want to be spinning your wheels and working too hard all the time, overworking yourself all the time. So you want to give yourself the right stimulus to help you adapt and recover. And you need that recovery to get those adaptations as well. Just like, so when say you're lifting a lot of weights and you're breaking down a lot of muscle, you have to recover so that muscle actually builds after you break it down. So, okay, next one. Okay, variation. Variation is very important. You don't want your training to get stagnant and just doing the same things over and over and over again. Variation is a strategy of using different loading strategies, exercise selections, tempo. This is where like time under tension would come in. So essentially, the definition of strength is creating an outside tension against, outside pressure against an inside force. Okay, so the more tension you create, the more strength you're using. Okay, so say gymnasts are a good example of that. They use a lot of tension to do a lot of the things they do. Same with power lifters. They couldn't move the weight they do without creating maximal tension in their whole kinetic chain. So that is, and then exercise selection could be going from like unilateral movements to bilateral movements, say as like a single leg deadlift to just a conventional deadlift. Loading strategies could be like going from hypertrophy, which is a certain rep range, like 8 to 12, and going to different things like that, or doing more volume, less volume, more time held in a plank over less time, stuff like that. So variation is key. Or like varying the loads in your week, like a light, medium, heavy day, stuff like that. Okay, phase potentiation. This is the next principle. The strategizing of different phases of training that are specifically aimed at certain goals that will help maximize competitive success over time. So this is essentially working in certain blocks. We call them mesocycles, or in a small term, a microcycle. And then you go to mesocycle. So in a mesocycle, you want to do, say, like 4 to 6 weeks of hypertrophy training, which means building muscle. And then you would go to a deload week, and then you'd go to the strength training mesocycle. And this would be more like 5 to 6 rep range. And then you take deload week, and then you get more into the maximal strength, depending on what you're doing. And this would be more like 1 to 3 rep range. And then also you can even throw in, depending if you're an Olympic lifter or whatever, you can have a power phase, which would be more like anywhere from 3 to 6 reps. And it's all varying times of rest in between. The heavier load you use, obviously you want to rest a little longer in between, but there is a such thing as too long a rest in between. Generally, you build back your ATP, endothelin triphosphate, which is basically a fancy word for energy. You build that back up about 80% in about a minute. So depending on what your goals are and what you're doing, you usually want to at least rest a minute or so. But that changes if we're working a little bit more for like maximizing mitochondria adaptation or what we're trying to do there. So phase potentiation is a great principle to know about. So you're not just training the same just hypertrophy all the time or just strength all the time. You have to, like with the hypertrophy, the point of that is to build those prime movers so you can have a more successful cycle in the strength cycle and so on and so forth. More for endurance people, that would be like building up your volume. So like building up like your mileage, only increasing 10% each week until you get to, like if you're training for a marathon, you get up to about 20 miles towards the end. So it's a little bit different for each sport or individual. So, and individuality is what we'll talk about next. So that would be the principle of individual differences. And when you're thinking about, everybody's different, I'll just say that. And you can use those principles we've talked about for just about everybody, but within those principles, you have to find the individual difference for people. So like saying like a squat pattern for somebody that has a different femur to torso ratio as somebody else, they're going to have different squat patterns, hinge patterns, just movement patterns in general. Also, basing off gender, like females can usually do more volume with strength training things, planning around menstrual cycles for heavy lifts, stuff like that, preventing injury, different experience for people. So somebody could be new, somebody can be more experienced, different abilities, and so many other factors too. They could have pre-existing conditions, so many different things that come in with the individual differences, principles that could go into building any sort of program for strength people, sport specific, endurance, just general physical preparedness, which general physical preparedness, I think just about anybody could do, depending on how much time you're dedicating to your physical training. I like to say at least two days a week, you can get pretty good adaptations off minimum 2 days a week. If you're looking for more adaptations, probably more like 3 to 5 days a week, but you got to remember you still have to have recovery and all that stuff. So those are the principles of strength training. Those are very basic. I can dive way in more into energy systems and all these other concepts. But I figured that just covers the basic strength training principles. And a lot of people get those confused, or they'll just use only one of them and not all of them when they're thinking about making their own exercise program or somebody else's. So these principles really come in handy. But to strategize your nutrition with your workouts, okay, there's a few strategies you could do. These are just some plant-based pre, peri, post-workout nutrition strategies that I like to do. And I have other people do them. So pre, that would be before. I like to say before is within about an hour of your workout. You don't want to eat more than about 300 calories, and you want about a 3-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein. So about 35 to 50 grams of carbs and about 15 to 20 grams of protein will do within about an hour of your workout. You want these foods to be familiar foods for you, something that's not going to upset your stomach, probably not something super high in fiber or anything like that before a workout. Examples are like certain protein bars are good. I like the macro bars. I like Cliff bars, Pro bars, all sorts of different bars out there, good vegan bars. You can have a piece of fruit with a protein shake. I like a banana. I'll just throw a banana in a protein shake. I like the main protein powders I use is Gnarly. They're a local company. They have really good vegan protein products. And then I like Plant Fusion. And the only other one I'll use is Orgain from Costco, because my partner works at Costco, so that's easy to grab. And then another example is just like some tofu scramble with some toast and jam, just to get that protein and the carbs. As for supplements, I'll use a little bit of creatine, like 5 grams of creatine, maybe a little bit of caffeine. I'm not a big fan of these chemically filled pre-workouts or anything like that. And creatine and caffeine are very, very clinically proven to help with your workouts and stuff like that. So, and then during, if I'm working out under 60 minutes or somebody's training under 60 minutes, I don't really like to do anything besides hydrate in the 60 minutes. But if I'm doing a longer effort over 60 minutes, I like to do about 1 gram of carbs per minute that you're working out. So say if you're working out 65 minutes, you probably want about 65 grams of carbs, and that can be split up over that time. Examples would be like the gels or goos, some sort of simple sugar that's not going to upset your stomach, sports drinks to work with the hydration and get some sugar in there. You can even throw in some BCAAs to help you if you're doing a really long effort to recover and everything like that. And then for post-workout, so this is after, and I mean after, within an hour, probably not up to 3, because after 3 hours, you probably want a full meal in there. But after, you want about the same as you do pre-workout, about 35 to 50 grams of carbs and about 15 to 20 grams of protein. And the same thing as pre, you want, you can have a protein bar, a protein shake with a fruit, or something easy and accessible right after that will help you with recovery. And that 3-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein is important, because without the carbs, you can't utilize the protein. And you can even go up to as high as 4-to-1 ratio of carbs to protein. And just your favorite way to get there is good, because it's really going to help with those adaptations and maximize those adaptations. This is definitely all the principles in this nutrition is definitely just down to the nitty gritty. These are some of just the basics. I have an Instagram. It's at Matt Stedman SNC. If you have questions, you can DM me. My email is at mattstedman27@gmail.com. I work at a gym called The Sect in Salt Lake. I do privates, small group training. I do online training, online programming. I also work at Slick. So if you're a student at Salt Lake Community College, I teach some classes there. And let me see. And yeah, so that's me. I in a nutshell. If you have any questions or anything, don't be afraid to get a hold of me.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Matt. So I think that was a really well-rounded approach and discussion of, the different cycles and the different aspects of fitness that help us all be more aware of that. And if you also want to put your contact information in the chat, and I can also, I'll do a follow-up email to, we had 500 people register for this event, Matt, which is really exciting.
Okay.
We're able to have
Awesome.
to join us on Zoom. So we'll certainly share that information. Great. So we do have a question for you. Somebody says they're a distance runner, excuse me.
Okay.
And so do you have any general recommendations for combining running with strength training.
Yes, I do. So with running, you don't want to stop getting your volume in because you need that to adapt yourself for getting the distance in there. Strength training, I would keep it to about 2 days a week because you're already getting a lot of load in the running, and you're probably running 3 to 5 days a week already. So I would keep the strength training to about 2, tops 3 days a week, and more simple the better. You could use the phase potentiation that we talked about, the hypertrophy phase, the strength phase, the maximal strength phase. But really, you could stay in the strength phase in that, and then also you want to keep up on the yoga. Like the yoga is going to be important that you could throw into after your strength training and stuff like that. So, I mean, it will also be very individual to you. I'd have to know like what asymmetries you've had and everything like that. So, but that's just very general. So, yeah.
Well, thanks, Matt. And I have a question. I know there's so many aspects to fitness. Do you have like 2 or 3, like just for awareness of physical fitness, like the 2 or 3 physical fitness goals that we should all kind of strive for, whatever age or gender or what have you? Like I've heard from other speakers, like lower body strength. It's really important to, for your legs and what have you, to be able to, to do squats or something like that. But do you have 2 or 3 tips on just overall physical fitness that we should strive for?
So, yeah, it is very broad, but to be general, just to be able to walk for 60 minutes or jog for 30 minutes or be able to squat. And I would actually say be able to crawl and roll around on the ground and stuff like that is amazing. That will transfer over to everything else in life. Being able to use your own body weight and have that awareness is going to carry over to everything. I mean, you don't have to be able to lift a ton of weight above your head. You don't have to be able to lift a ton of weight off the ground to be healthy. Those things are very individual and they go towards almost like sports specific things. But saying that, you should be able to bend over and grab something off the ground without pain. Okay. And that would come into like technique. And then also a big thing I would talk about is actually grip strength, because grip strength can actually be an indicator of longevity. And once you start losing your grip strength, that's kind of an indicator that you're starting to break down. So like even working on like carrying as many groceries as you can is good for your grip strength, or even using a ball to keep squeezing the ball or something like that, just to keep your grip strength up, to be able to grab something is very key for longevity.
Thank you. I think that's really important, the quality of life, because it's not only how long we live, but the quality of life as we live longer, and just basic mobility and things like that allow us to get through our day. And Matt, we do have one more question for you. How does fitness change when you're 60 and older?
Yeah, so
goals change or?
Yes, goals will change because a lot of times your max heart rate goes down, your bone density goes down a lot of times. So we're definitely usually not going to use as much load. It's probably not going to be as intense, but it's also going to be tailored to that individual. So what's intense for them is not going to be as intense for somebody else, but it will be intense enough for them to see adaptations. Does that make sense?
It does.
So it would just be, like using a little less weights, concentrating even more on the mechanics. I mean, you should be concentrating on the mechanics anyway, but and just listening to them and listening for feedback, because feedback is key with anybody, but even more so with that population, because they might be taking, you want to know what medications they're taking, you want to know their history, you want to know all that stuff so you can work around to help them find their best person that they feel like the most confident and the best in their skin.
Okay, well, thank you, Matt. That was really helpful, and thank you so much for joining us. And we have your contact, your Instagram and Facebook information in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Deepsy.
Thank you.
I want to thank her because she got me involved with this. and I've trained her a little bit. She's awesome to work with. And thank you, everybody. I learned a little bit something from all the presenters. And thank you, Harriet, for running this whole thing.
Well, thank you so much, Matt, and we'd love to, have you back. So no, I appreciate those kind words. And once again, so we've been doing this for 3.5 hours, and we still have most of our participants with us. So thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Nikki Olson, Dr. Nikki Davis, Dr. Patrick Olson, Marty Nightingale talking about yoga and mindful meditation, and Sharon Bates for the awesome cooking demo. And then Matt leaving, but I think I got everybody's. And thank you all who have joined us. So once again, Salt Lake Thrive. I'm going to put that in the chat. So Salt Lake Thrive, once again, our mission, we're dedicated to helping people be aware of the impact of their lifestyle choices, their diet on our health, on our planet, as Dr. Olson spoke about, and last but certainly not least, the real impact our daily choices make on helping to create a more compassionate world for millions, if not billions of animals, millions and billions of which are slaughtered every day. So anytime we choose, and not everybody goes 100% plant-based right away or ever, but every time we choose to eat a healthy, whole food, plant-based meal, then we're helping the planet, we're helping ourselves, and we're certainly helping the animals. So we are recording the event. I see the flashing recording sign. So we'll work on, it's also on the Facebook Live. So I have everyone's email address who signed up on Eventbrite. So we'll send out a link to the recording. Give us a few days to do that. Sometimes we have to do a little post-processing. So later in the week. So once again, Salt Lake Thrive. And thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And we went for 3.5 hours. I just really appreciate and thank our speakers and our participants as well for sharing a lot of great information. Like I say, I think people can take home and start using this weekend. And once again, happy spring, everybody. Happy spring 2021. I know I'm excited about the first day of spring. I hope everybody else is too.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Everybody. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks to all. Thank you.